People like you entertain us from the back, Vivian Lark said, pointing me toward the servant's piano while 400 guests waited under $50,000 worth of rented lights. Then she smiled at me like she had handed me a tip. The Ashford Grand Ballroom went soft and still. Forks stopped. Champagne glasses hung near mouths. The string quartet near the stage looked down at their shoes. I looked at that little upright piano by the service doors. It had a chipped leg, 2 dead keys, and a brass plaque nobody had polished since the 90s. Vivian leaned close. Don't make this awkward, Marlene. We need a little atmosphere. I had my late father's leather scorebook in my tote. I had an unopened donor packet in my purse. My badge was turned backward because the clip had caught on my shawl. Vivian never looked at it. She just saw my deep brown skin, my silver-threaded braids pinned low, and the back hallway behind me. So I walked to the servant's piano. I tuned the worst string by ear before I sat. 2 fingers, 1 soft turn. A G that had been suffering all night finally came home. Vivian laughed from the stage, and 20 minutes later, Raymond Whitcomb grabbed the microphone so fast his program folded in half. His face had gone pale, because he had just read the name M.E. Price. 6 weeks earlier, I was in room 114 at Ashford Middle School, teaching 32 7th graders how to breathe before a note. Again, I said, not louder, cleaner. They stood on the risers with their folders bent and their sneakers squeaking. Wednesday afternoon, 3:26, rain on the windows, somebody's trumpet case left open by the door. I heard a wrong E from the second row. Darren, I said. He froze. I didn't do anything. You did one beautiful wrong thing. The class laughed. I walked over and tapped his hymn book with 2 fingers. Here, you're reaching, don't chase it. He tried again. There it was. That was my gift. Not magic, not mystery, work. I could hear one wrong note in a children's choir from 3 rows back. I could hear fear in a piano bench. I could hear pride in a voice before the person knew it was there. I had been teaching music in Ashford, Ohio for 27 years. Public school pay, church pianist on Sundays, widow for 9 years. Mother to no children of my own, unless you counted every child who had ever called me Miss Price in September and hugged me in May. I counted them. My father, Ellis Price, used to say, Marlene, don't rise, place the note. He said it when someone clapped too soon. He said it when a club owner shorted him. He said it when a woman in a fur coat once asked if he knew any real music while he was playing Duke Ellington better than her radio ever had. I kept the sentence. I don't rise. I place the note. That day, after the last bell, I stayed behind to tune the old classroom upright. The district said we had no budget for a tuner until October. October was a polite word for never. I had learned from my father. Not the full trade. Enough to keep children from singing against a wounded instrument. The piano smelled like dust, pencil shavings, and old felt. I had the front panel off when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ashford Memorial Foundation. Final donor materials ready for pickup. Please confirm name listing for Gala program. I looked at it for a long second. Then I locked the phone. The gift had already been wired. $312,000. My hands had shaken when I signed the transfer, not from regret, from memory. Ellis Price had left me more than people knew. Not rich money, patient money, lesson money, small checks, funeral jobs, backroom gigs, church anniversaries, a savings account he never touched. Then my mother's little house on Sycamore Street, sold after I cared for her through her last winter. I had added my own savings too. $42,000 from summer lessons, $18,000 from stipends I never spent, $9,000 from a certificate of deposit I had opened in 2004. The rest came from the sale of the house. People think quiet means empty. That's one of their more expensive mistakes. The matching gift was for the pediatric rehab wing at Ashford Memorial. New therapy tables, music equipment, accessible transport, a sensory room with soft lights. I had taught too many children who drove 40 minutes to Akron for care Ashford should have had 10 years ago. I gave under my legal initials, M.E. Price, Marlene Elaine Price, not for secrecy, for peace. I did not want flowers from the board. I did not want a plaque. I did not want Vivian Lark kissing my cheek in front of a camera with her hand already reaching for the next donor. I just wanted the wing built. That should have been simple. It wasn't. On Friday, I drove to the foundation office on Sycamore Street. Ashford had two main kinds of buildings: brick ones that remembered factory money and glass ones trying to forget it. The foundation had both. Raymond Whitcomb met me at the front desk. He was 71, tall, careful, and always dressed like a courthouse might call him back any minute. Retired probate attorney, foundation chair, a man who read signatures before smiles. "Miss Price," he said, "thank you for coming." "Raymond." He held a cream folder against his chest. "I kept your records separate as requested." "I appreciate that." His eyes moved to my tote. I had Ellis's scorebook inside. Brown leather, cracked spine, brass corners dulled by time. I carried it when I played important rooms. My father had carried it into back rooms. There was a difference, not the comfortable kind. "You still have it," Raymond said. "My father's book?" "Always." He nodded once. "Good." That was all. Raymond knew pieces of my father's story. Most older people in Ashford did. Ellis Price had played the grand when the hotel still kept a supper club in the basement. He played weddings, funerals, anniversaries, union dinners, and private parties where nobody put his name on the invitation. He came home with cash in his sock. He came home with stories he softened for my mother. He came home with songs. The scorebook held 37 of them. The first page was torn out. I had looked for it for years. All that remained was a ragged edge and my father's handwriting on the next page, for M.E., if they ever ask where it came from. Nobody ever had. Raymond led me into a conference room with a long table and coffee in silver pump pots. Vivian Lark was already inside. She wore winter white in April, pearl earrings, gold watch, hair smooth enough to look negotiated. Vivian had been hosting Ashford benefits for 15 years. Hospital gala, library luncheon, Christmas homes tour. If there was a ribbon, she wanted scissors in her hand. Her catering company, Lark House Events, had done half the town's weddings. The other half had heard what she said about them. "Marlene," she said, stretching my name thin, "how sweet of you to help with the school choir piece." "I'm not bringing the choir." Her smile paused. "No?" "No. Raymond asked me to consult on the historical music portion." "That's right," Raymond said. Vivian turned toward him. "Historical is a generous word. My family's piece is charming, but we don't need to overcomplicate it." "Which piece?" I asked. She tapped a program mock-up on the table, Lark House Nocturne. My fingers went still on the chairback. I knew that shape of title. Fancy people loved putting their last name on things that had passed through somebody else's hands. "What is it?" I asked. Vivian slid the paper away before I could read the fine print. "An old melody from my grandmother's house," she said. "We're auctioning the first performance rights during the gala. A donor has already promised $75,000 if we present it properly." "First performance rights?" I said. Raymond looked at her. Vivian kept smiling. "Ceremonial language, of course." "Who wrote it?" She laughed softly. "Oh, Marlene, some things belong to a family, not a filing cabinet." "Belong. There it was." a small word with a locked drawer inside. Raymond's jaw moved once. I said, "I'd like to see the sheet music. We'll have copies at rehearsal." Vivian checked her phone. "Now, if we're finished with that." We weren't finished, not even close. I left the foundation with my donor packet still sealed. Raymond had handed it to me in the hallway. "Your badge is inside," he said. "Your listing remains initials only." "Thank you." He lowered his voice. "If anything at the gala makes you uncomfortable, come to me." That was an odd thing to say. Why would it? He looked back toward the conference room. Vivian's voice floated out, bright and hard, telling someone the linens had to be ivory, not cream, because Ashford donors knew the difference. Raymond said, "Because some people forget what records are for." I put the packet in my purse. I did not open it. On Sunday, I played at Mount Zion on Turner Avenue. The old wooden rail by the choir steps still had a smooth place where my father's hand used to rest. He had played there before me. My mother sang alto there until her breath got too short. I wore a navy dress and low shoes. My braids were pinned at the back of my neck. Deep brown hands on ivory keys. Familiar hands. Working hands. After service, Mrs. Bell stopped by the piano. "You playing that hospital gala?" she asked. "Consulting." "That means yes, with no credit." I smiled. "It means consulting." She gave me a look only churchwomen can give. It had 3 warnings and a casserole recipe in it. "I heard Vivian Lark is running it," she said. "She's hosting." Same difference when a woman likes microphones. Mrs. Bell was 83 and had earned every opinion. I put the fallboard down. "It's for the children's wing." "That's why I'm not telling you to stay home." She touched my shoulder, then nodded at the tote near my bench. "You got Ellis with you?" "Always." "Then listen twice." I did. The next Thursday, I went to the Ashford Grand for rehearsal. The hotel sat at the corner of Sycamore and Bell, with green awnings and brass doors that reflected people taller than they were. Local money loved that hotel. It let them pretend Akron was far away, and the old factory names still opened every door. Inside, the ballroom was already half built for the gala. Rental chandeliers hung from black trusses. Tables waited in stacks. White roses sat in buckets near the bar. The stage crew carried cables with tired faces. A young pianist sat at the grand on stage, flipping through loose sheet music. I heard 3 measures before I stopped walking. My body knew it before my mind did. Left hand descending, right hand answering late. A soft lift in the 4th bar. My father's song, not similar, not inspired, his. The air changed in my chest. I walked to the stage. The pianist looked up. "Can I help you?" "I'm Marlene Price. Who gave you that music?" He checked the top page. "Mrs. Lark. She said it was an old family thing." "May I see it?" He hesitated. I did not reach. I waited. That matters. Reaching gives people a chance to call you rude. He handed it over. The title read, Lark House Nocturne in printed script. Under it, arranged for gala performance by Benton Vale. No composer line, no date, no source. I looked at the first 8 measures. My father had written them in 1978. He had played them in our kitchen at midnight while my mother wrapped leftover chicken in foil and told him to come to bed. He called it Ashford After Rain. I remembered because I was 8 years old. I was under the table with a library book, pretending not to listen. "You all right?" the pianist asked. "Yes." That was the polite spoken line. Inside, I was counting. 1 stolen title, 1 missing name, 1 $75,000 pledge tied to a lie, gone. Vivian came in from the side doors with a clipboard pressed to her chest. "Marlene," she said, "there you are. We were just discussing placement." "For the music?" "For you." She pointed across the ballroom. Near the service entrance, beside a rolling rack of tablecloths, sat a small upright piano, brown wood, scratched sides, a water ring on top. "The grand is for the featured performance," Vivian said. "But I thought you might play a little during arrivals. Something warm, familiar, nothing that pulls focus. The upright hasn't been tuned. That's why I asked for you. Dry work, dressed as a compliment. Vivian had a talent for that." The stage manager looked away. The pianist studied his shoes. A florist pretended roses needed urgent attention. Bystanders tell on themselves in small ways. I walked to the upright and pressed middle C flat. I pressed the G worse. Vivian winced. "Can you make it acceptable?" "I can make it honest." She blinked. I opened my tote and took out my tuning lever. "You brought tools?" she asked. "I usually do." That bothered her. Competence often bothers people who plan to use you as decoration. I removed the front panel. The smell came out first. Dust, old wood, and metal gone tired. I tested the pins, then adjusted one string. Softly, carefully. The G settled. Vivian watched me like she had expected a mop and found a key. "Wonderful," she said. "Then we're all set." "No," I said. "I still need the source for the nocturne." Her mouth tightened. "Just a little." "My grandmother's papers." "Which papers?" "Family papers." "Do they name a composer?" Her eyes moved to the stage, then back to me. "Marlene, this is a charity event. Please don't turn a lovely tribute into a school board meeting." There it was again, a clean little shove. I put the panel back on the upright. "I'm asking because music has owners." Vivian's laugh was quiet. "Music has feeling. Lawyers have owners." That was when Raymond entered through the ballroom doors. He carried a stack of programs marked Proof 3. He saw me by the upright. He saw Vivian. He saw the printed sheet in my hand. "Is everything all right?" he asked. Vivian answered too fast. "Perfectly. Marlene was just helping us with the service piano." Service piano, not lobby piano. Not arrival piano? Service piano. Raymond looked at me. I said, "I heard the nocturne." His face changed in a way most people would miss. Probate lawyers spend their lives reading the living while the dead wait on paper. "Did you?" he said. "Yes." Vivian clapped once. "Good. Then everyone is excited." Nobody was. The rehearsal moved on. I sat at the upright for 40 minutes, playing soft hymns, old standards, and little bridges for imaginary guests. Staff passed with trays. A bartender counted glassware. 2 junior board members came in, both named women with perfect posture and nervous smiles. Karen Holt approved the auction paddles. Denise Avery checked the seating chart. Both saw me at the service doors. Neither asked why. Moral courage was not on the rental invoice. At 5:15, I packed my tuning lever and the copied program page I had slipped into my folder. I did not take the sheet music. I did not need to. I had the song in my bones. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and opened Ellis's scorebook on my lap. Ashford After Rain began on page 2. The torn edge before it looked rougher than usual in that gray light. I ran my thumb over the missing page. Then I called Calvin Brooks. Calvin had played bass with my father in the 70s. He lived outside Canton now. Bad knees, sharp memory. He answered on the 5th ring. "Marlene Price," he said. "If this is about church, I already gave. It's about Daddy." Silence. Then his voice softened. "All right." "Did he ever play a song at the Ashford Grand called Ashford After Rain?" Calvin breathed out. 1978, he said. "Basement room, blue carpet, bad chicken. Your daddy wore that brown jacket with the narrow lapels." My hand tightened on the steering wheel. "Was he paid?" "For that song? No." I closed my eyes. Calvin kept going. Man named Lark said he wanted it for a family anniversary. Promised Ellis $900 for a clean copy and performance rights for one night. Your daddy gave him the title page and copy sheet. Never saw a dime. $900. That was rent money back then. Do you remember the man's first name? Arthur Lark, Vivian's grandfather, if that's the same Lark crowd. It was. Ashford was small enough for old names to keep wearing new perfume. Calvin, did Daddy ever sign it over? He wouldn't have. Ellis was generous, not foolish. I looked down at the scorebook for M.E. if they ever ask where it came from. They're calling it Lark House Nocturne, I said. Calvin made a sound low in his throat. Of course they are. I thanked him and ended the call. For a full minute, I sat in the car outside the Ashford Grand while guests for a Rotary dinner walked past me in sport coats and soft shoes. Then I opened my purse. The donor packet was still sealed. Cream envelope, foundation crest, my name hidden inside. M.E. Price. I almost opened it. I didn't. Not yet. I drove home the long way. Sycamore Street was wet from the rain. The storefront windows had that dull evening shine, and the Grand's brass doors disappeared behind me in the mirror. I kept hearing Calvin's voice. Arthur Lark. $900. One night. I parked behind my little house on Turner Avenue and sat there with both hands in my lap. My porch light had burned out again. The neighbor's dog barked twice, then quit. Somewhere down the block, a man laughed too loud at a television. I was 52 years old, and I knew better than to make decisions hungry. So I went inside. My kitchen was small. Yellow curtains, white stove. A clock from Mount Zion's anniversary dinner in 1999. My husband, David, had built the narrow shelf over the radiator because I kept stacking hymnals on the chair. He had been gone 9 years. I still put my keys in the blue bowl he made in a pottery class he hated. I warmed soup. I did not taste it. Then I washed the bowl, dried it, and laid Ellis's scorebook on the kitchen table. Daddy, I said, what did you keep? The house gave me the same answer it always did. Enough. I opened the book again. Page 2. Ashford after rain. The notes were written in black ink, with small pencil changes near the bridge. My father had neat music handwriting and terrible grocery handwriting. He could make a rest look like it had manners. The missing first page bothered me worse now. I took out the old cardboard box from the closet by the back door. It held my father's things I had not been able to sort twice. Tax forms, union cards, church programs, one tie clip, a broken watch. 3 photographs from clubs where smoke had made everybody look older. I put it on the table and started. At the bottom, under a stack of yellowed receipts, I found a folded program from the Ashford Grand Supper Club. April 22nd, 1978. Ellis Price Trio. Calvin Brooks, bass. Walter Dean, drums. Private anniversary event for Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Lark. My mouth went dry. The program did not name the song. It did not need to. It placed my father in that basement room on that night, under that family name. I kept digging. There was a small receipt from Ashford Music Copy Service, $12.40. Clean lead sheet and title copy. Date stamped April 21st, 1978, the day before. I set it beside the program. Then I found a letter. Not the missing title page. A letter. It was still in its envelope, folded into thirds. The paper had gone soft at the creases. My father's name was typed on the front. Mr. Ellis Price. No address. Hand-delivered, most likely. I opened it slowly. Arthur Lark had signed it in blue ink. Dear Mr. Price, thank you for agreeing to prepare your original composition for presentation at our family anniversary gathering. As discussed, my office will tender $900 after the event for the one-night use of the enclosed composition, Currently titled Ashford After Rain. One night use. Original composition. Current title. There are times when anger comes in hot. Mine came in cold. I read the letter again. Then I read it a third time. Under the signature, someone had written a note in pencil. Title page retained by A. L for program preparation. A, L, Arthur Lark, retained. That was a polished word for kept. I sat back in the chair. The soup was gone from my stomach like I had never eaten. I took out my phone and called Raymond. He answered on the second ring. Marlene? Are you alone? A pause. Yes. I found a letter. What kind? Arthur Lark wrote to my father in 1978. It names Ashford After Rain as Daddy's original composition. Raymond did not speak. I looked at the letter on the table. It says $900 was due after the event, I said. One night use only. Do you have it now? Yes. Do not give that to Vivian. I wasn't planning to. Good. His voice sounded thinner than it had that afternoon. I said, Raymond, why did you warn me? He breathed through his nose. Because I saw loan papers. What loan papers? Not enough to accuse, enough to worry. Say it plainly. He was quiet for 3 seconds. That was a lawyer measuring his own floor. Vivian used the Gala's donor projections in a private bridge loan discussion. I looked toward the dark kitchen window. My gift? Likely. Likely isn't plain. She referenced the anonymous match as secured charitable revenue. She implied she controlled the event proceeds. Outside, a car passed slow. I said, the foundation controlled those funds. Correct. So why would a lender believe her? Because she hosted the gala. Because Lark House Events held the vendor contract. Because she knows how to make access look like authority. Access. People like Vivian lived on that. A badge, a stage, a borrowed foundation seal. Who is the lender? I asked. I can't confirm yet. Raymond. I believe it involved her husband. Benton Vale? No. Benton is the arranger. I closed my eyes. Her banker husband is Charles Lark. Yes, I had met Charles twice. Smooth gray hair, pink face, handshake too soft. He managed private clients at Buckeye Trust on Bell Street and always looked at black women like he was deciding which door we had used. Did the board know? I asked. No. Did you? Not until this week. Why didn't you stop her? I needed proof. There's that word. Marlene. No, I hear you. I did. I did not like it, but I heard it. Raymond said, bring the letter tomorrow. To your office? No, too visible. Meet me at the church after choir practice. You want to meet at Mount Zion? Your building, your terms. That was the first sensible thing he had said. All right, I told him. And Marlene? Yes. Open your donor packet. My eyes moved to my purse on the sideboard. Why? Because Vivian may not know your full name, but someone is looking for it. I stood. Who? I got a call from Denise Avery. She asked whether M.E. Price was an individual, a trust, or a corporate donor. My hand tightened around the phone. What did you tell her? That donor records are restricted. And she said Vivian needed it for seating. I laughed once. It did not sound like joy. Seating. Yes. I walked to my purse. The cream envelope was still sealed. Raymond said, if your badge is wrong, I need to know. I opened it with a butter knife because that is what was in reach. Inside was a donor letter, 2 program proofs, and a badge. The badge read, M.E. Price Principal Matching Donor. I stared at it. That badge would have told Vivian everything, if I had worn it straight, but I had not even opened the envelope. Then I saw the second badge. Volunteer Music Support Marlene Price. My throat went tight. There it was. 2 badges, 1 woman, 2 rooms. Raymond, I said. Yes? There are 2 badges. He swore softly. I had never heard Raymond Whitcomb swear. One says principal donor, I said. The other says volunteer music support. That packet was supposed to contain 1 badge. Who assembled them? Foundation staff. Who had access? He did not answer fast enough. I already knew. Vivian, I said. She supervised guest experience. Guest experience, another clean phrase with dirt under it. I looked at both badges on my table. Principal donor, volunteer support. 1 opened doors, 1 kept me near them. She tried to sort me before I arrived, I said. Raymond's voice dropped. Bring both badges. I will. And the letter. Yes. Keep the scorebook with you. It's never far. After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen for a long time. Then I put the letter in a plastic sleeve from an old choir binder. I placed the badges in the front pocket. I put the Ashford Grand program and the copy receipt behind them. A small stack. A quiet stack, but not empty. The next afternoon, my 7th graders sang like they had something to prove. Children can feel when your spirit is carrying furniture. They may not know the room, but they hear the weight. Miss Price? Darren asked after class. Yes? You okay? I'm working something out. Is it music? It usually is. He nodded like that made perfect sense. Then he pointed at the piano. That G sounds better. It got tired of suffering. He grinned and left. I stayed behind to lock the cabinet. My classroom had 32 chairs, 4 bent music stands, and 1 poster of Marian Anderson with tape curling at the corners. I looked at her face before I turned off the light. A black woman in a formal gown, a country trying to decide where to put her. She sang anyway. At 6:30, I met Raymond at Mount Zion. Choir practice had just ended. Mrs. Bell was still in the front pew, sorting peppermints into her purse like she had been assigned inventory by heaven. Raymond waited by the side aisle in a dark coat. He looked strange in that church, not unwelcome, just unused to a place where nobody cared how many boards he chaired. Mrs. Bell looked him over. You Raymond Whitcomb? Yes, ma'am. You here to help or complicate? Raymond blinked. Help, I hope. That's the best kind of answer from a lawyer. She turned to me. I'll be in the fellowship hall. That meant she would be close enough to hear raised voices. I loved her for that. Raymond and I sat near the piano. The sanctuary smelled like floor polish and paper fans. The old wooden rail by the choir steps caught the overhead light. My father had stood there 1,000 times. My mother had sung there until her voice got thin. I opened my folder on the front pew. Raymond put on his glasses. He read the Arthur Lark letter without speaking. Then he read the receipt, then the program. When he reached the 2 badges, he took his glasses off. That is worse than I thought. Tell me the rest. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. The Gala is under pressure. Because Vivian promised too much? Because she pledged a net raise of $500,000. I sat back. The wing needs $312,000 matched, I said. Yes. That's my match. Yes. So why promise 500? To make the board approve Lark House as exclusive vendor. How much is her contract? $128,000. For 1 night? Food, staffing, lighting coordination, florals, donor experience. Donor experience put me by the kitchen. His mouth tightened. I kept my voice even. Go on. She fronted expenses through a line of credit. With Charles? Through a private note tied to Buckeye Trust clients. How much? He looked at the folder. $186,000. There it was, a number with teeth. $186,000. More than my house cost when David and I bought it. More than the district spent on new music stands in 15 years. More than enough to make a woman rename a dead man's song if she thought it would keep her standing. Raymond said, I received a copy of a pitch summary. From whom? An anonymous delivery. You kept it? Yes. Do you have it? He reached into his case and took out a flat folder. Not cream. Gray. No crest. He placed it on the pew between us. I did not touch it at first. Read me what matters, I said. Raymond opened it. Lark House Events anticipates substantial cash inflow following the Ashford Memorial Gala, he read. Anonymous principal donor match of $312,000 to be announced. Naming momentum expected to generate additional pledges. Foundation chair supportive. He stopped. I looked at him. Were you supportive? No. But your name helped. Yes. That cost him to say. Good. Keep reading. He swallowed. Collateral narrative includes exclusive vendor fees, donor access rights, and anticipated first performance auction revenue from Lark family heritage composition. I pressed my palm flat on the pew. $75,000. Yes. My father's song. Yes. And my donation. Yes. All of it on one page. A woman had taken my father's melody, my gift, the hospital's name, and Raymond's reputation, then bundled it into a story for people with money. Loss inventory came to me clean. My father's $900, gone. His title page, gone. His name, gone. My badge, swapped. My gift, leveraged. My place in the room, assigned. Servants. I looked at that word in my mind and set it down where I could see it. Servants, not service, not support. Servants. A word Vivian had not said at rehearsal but had built into the room. I asked, who else saw this? I don't know. Does Vivian know you have it? No. Does Charles? No. What about Denise Avery? Raymond looked toward the back of the church. I'm unsure. Karen Holt? Likely not. Benton Vale? He arranged the music. That wasn't my question. Raymond looked at me again. I don't know. That was honest enough. From the fellowship hall, Mrs. Bell coughed once. A warning cough. Time was moving. I gathered the documents. Raymond said, Marlene, we can pull the song from the program. No. He stared. No? If you pull it now, Vivian will say it was a misunderstanding. It may protect the foundation. It may protect Vivian. He did not like that. Neither did I. But the truth sat between us. If she stands on that stage, I said, she'll have to stand on what she built. Raymond folded his hands. And your gift? My gift is for the children's wing, not her table settings. Then I should freeze internal transfers. Can you? Yes, quietly. Do it. I can also move your donor record to restricted legal custody. That sounds expensive. It is a folder in my locked cabinet. Then do that too. He almost smiled. Almost. I put the scorebook back in my tote. Raymond touched the edge of the Arthur Lark letter. This is strong, he said. But the missing title page would be stronger. It's gone. Maybe. I looked at him. He said, Arthur Lark retained it for program preparation. That was 48 years ago. Families keep flattering paper. Vivian would have found it. Unless someone else did first. Who? He tapped the gray folder. Whoever delivered this. That opened another door. I did not want another door, but there it was. Before Raymond left, Mrs. Bell came out of the fellowship hall with 2 paper cups of coffee. She handed one to him. Lawyer coffee, she said. No sugar. Repent later. Raymond accepted it. Thank you. She turned to me. You all right? Yes. She looked at the tote. That book getting heavy? It is. Then set it down where it can work. I carried those words home. That night, I did something I had avoided for 9 years. I opened David's old filing cabinet. He had kept warranties, tax receipts, and every church bulletin where my name appeared as pianist. I used to tease him about that. Marlene, he would say, one day somebody will need proof you've been doing all this work. I thought he meant me. Maybe he meant the world. In the bottom drawer, behind the water heater manual, I found a brown accordion file marked Ellis, David's handwriting. I sat on the floor. Inside were photocopies, newspaper clippings, one faded photograph of my father at the Ashford Grand, standing beside a piano with a cigarette machine behind him. He looked young and tired and beautiful in the plain way working musicians did. Brown jacket, narrow lapels. Calvin had remembered right. Behind the photograph was a note from David. Your father's papers were mixed in with the house closing box. I kept copies here in case the originals are ever lost. You said not to fuss with them. I fussed anyway. D. I held that note to my chest, not crying, breathing. Then I looked through the copies. There was no title page, but there was a photocopy of a handwritten list. Songs Ellis played at Ashford Grand, April 22nd, 1978. Ashford After Rain was number 6. Beside it, David had written, same theme as page 2 in book. My husband had not been a musician. He had been a maintenance supervisor at the county building. He heard squeaky hinges, not wrong E's, but he knew evidence when it had a drawer. I added the photocopy to the folder. By then, it was after midnight. I did not sleep much. The next morning, Vivian called me at 7:42. I was making coffee in my robe with my braids wrapped in a scarf. Marlene, she said, good, I caught you. You did. I wanted to clarify gala attire. Of course she did. What needs clarifying? Black is fine, simple is best. I poured coffee. Simple. Yes, since you'll be near the service entrance, darker fabric blends better. Blends. There was the cousin of servants. I have a navy dress, I said. That may read too formal. For a gala? For your role. Her voice stayed sweet. The sugar was there to hide the rot. I said, what role is that? A small pause. Atmosphere. I looked at the 2 badges on my table. Atmosphere. A woman with 27 years in a classroom. A donor who had given $312,000. A black daughter holding proof of her father's stolen work. Atmosphere. I said, I'll wear what I own. Vivian laughed softly. Well, we all do. That was the first openly ugly thing she had said to me alone. Not loud, not enough for a complaint, just enough to remind me she thought money had a color and I was wearing the wrong one. Then she added, and Marlene? Please don't bring extra materials. We want the evening uncluttered. Music gets cluttered fast. Not if everyone stays in their place. There it was. Plain now. I put my cup down. My place? Don't be sensitive. I asked a question. She sighed. I mean, the room has a flow. Donors in front, staff in back, support along the sides. It's not personal. It never is. No, it really isn't. You people make everything so heavy. The kitchen went still. You people, not a slur. She did not need one. The old language had many clean dresses. I looked at my deep brown hand around the phone. I thought of my mother pressing my Easter gloves flat on the ironing board. I thought of my father counting cash in the bathroom because club owners like to say, come back Monday. I thought of children in my classroom who already knew which adults double-checked their passes. I said, I'll see you at the gala. That's the spirit. I ended the call, not because I had no answer, because some answers need witnesses. At school, I copied the documents during my planning period. One set for me, one set for Raymond, One set I sealed in an envelope and put in Mrs. Bell's mailbox at church. On the front, I wrote, "If I forget my calm, remind me. She called me at lunch." "I opened it," she said. "I figured you would. You didn't seal it well." I sealed it with tape. Cheap tape. I smiled for the first time all day. Then she said, "You going to that gala to fight?" "No." "Good. I'm going to play." That's worse for them. Maybe it was. At 3:15, as students packed up, the office called my room. "Miss Price, there's a man here from Lark House Events." My body went alert. "What does he want?" "He says he needs your gala confirmation forms." I didn't receive any. "He says Mrs. Lark sent him." I looked at my tote. The scorebook was inside. The folder was locked in my desk. "Tell him I'm teaching. It's after dismissal. Then tell him I'm still teaching." I hung up and went to the office myself. A young man in a black Lark House polo stood by the counter. He held a clipboard and looked too nervous to be dangerous. "Miss Price?" he said. "Yes." "Mrs. Lark asked me to collect any packet materials you haven't turned in." "What materials?" "Badge, parking pass, music list, things like that." "Did she say why?" "She said some packets had errors." "Did she?" He shifted his weight. I kept my voice mild. "What's your name?" "Evan." "Evan, do you know what's in my packet?" "No, ma'am." "Then you can tell Mrs. Lark I'll bring it myself." He looked relieved and frightened at the same time. "She said it was urgent." I'm sure she did. The school secretary, Mrs. Patel, had stopped typing. She had known me 15 years. She had watched parents ask if there was another music teacher before they heard me play. She looked at Evan over her glasses. "You need to sign out," she said. He did. After he left, Mrs. Patel turned to me. "You want me to note that visit?" "Yes, please." "What should I write?" I thought about it. Then I said, "Unscheduled request for donor packet materials." Her eyebrows rose. "Donor?" "Packet," I said. She nodded once. People who work school offices understand what to write down. By Friday, the gala was 2 days away. Raymond called while I was sorting choir robes at Mount Zion. "I moved the donor records," he said. "Good." I also reviewed the vendor contract. And Lark House receives 30% on any auction item it sources. I stopped with a burgundy robe in my hands. "Say that again." 30%. On the song? If the auction description lists it as a Lark House-sourced heritage performance, yes. 75,000 pledged means 22,500 to Vivian. Yes. That was the next rung. Not just reputation, not just debt, commission. My father's song had become her invoice. I hung the robe slowly. Does the board know that clause exists? It's in the contract. That wasn't my question. No. Who signed it? I did. Silence, a long one. Then he said, "I should have read closer." Yes. He took that. Good. "I'm calling an executive check-in before doors open," he said. "Who will be there?" "Vivian, Karen Holt, Denise Avery, Charles Lark, and me." "Why Charles?" "He requested lender observer access." I laughed without humor. "A banker watching charity money walk by?" "Exactly." "Invite me." "Marlene, that could expose your identity early." "Not my donor identity." "What identity then?" "The music consultant Vivian keeps placing by the door." Raymond understood. "She'll object." "Let her." He was quiet. Then he said, "Saturday, 4:30, Ashford Grand, Bradford Room." "Not the ballroom?" "Private meeting room." "No." "No?" "If it's about the song, meet near the piano." "That may draw attention." "Good." Marlene. "Raymond, I have spent a lifetime being handled in side rooms. I'm done giving those rooms my best evidence." He breathed out. All right? Ballroom, 4:30. After we ended, I stood in the choir room with the robe still hooked on my finger. Mrs. Bell came in carrying a foil pan. Macaroni for Sunday, she said. Don't let anybody call it casserole. I won't. She put it on the table and looked at me. You got that look. What look? The one your daddy had when a man said he'd pay him after. I sat down. Vivian gets 30% if the song sells. Mrs. Bell's face hardened. She put a tip jar on theft. That was exactly it. A tip jar. On theft. Saturday came with clear skies. I cleaned my house because my mother had trained me to meet trouble with clean counters. I polished my black shoes. I pressed my navy dress. I pinned my braids low and firm, with the silver threads showing because I had earned every one of them. I put the Arthur Lark letter, the receipt, the old program, David's photocopy, both badges, and Ellis's scorebook in my tote. Then I opened the donor packet one more time. The principal donor badge looked different in daylight, not more powerful, more ridiculous. A rectangle of plastic had been enough for Vivian to decide which woman she wanted to see. I put both badges in the inside pocket of my purse. At 4:10, I walked through the brass doors of the Ashford Grand. The lobby smelled like lilies, butter, and new carpet, pretending it was old. Staff moved fast. Donors had not arrived yet, but the building already had that held breath feeling money creates when it wants applause. Evan from Lark House saw me first. His eyes dropped to my tote. Then he looked away. Moral verdict, frightened, but not blind. Karen Holt stood near the ballroom entrance with a tablet. She saw me and gave a small smile that stopped before warmth. Moral verdict, polite enough to avoid guilt, quiet enough to keep it. Denise Avery was checking table cards. She looked at my chest. No badge. Then my face. Then my tote. Moral verdict, curious when courage would have cost her nothing. Raymond stood by the stage, program proofs in hand. He looked older than he had 2 days before. Vivian was already there. Winter white again. Pearls again. Smile sharpened. Charles Lark stood beside her in a navy suit, one hand in his pocket, the other holding his phone. He had the soft banker face of a man who had never carried a tray unless it held bourbon. Benton Vale sat at the grand piano, shuffling the printed arrangement. Vivian saw me and moved first. Marlene, she said, we're not ready for arrival music. I'm here for the 4:30 meeting. Her smile did not move. What meeting? Raymond answered. The executive check-in. Vivian turned. Raymond, we discussed keeping that administrative. I changed my mind. Charles looked at me. Is she necessary? She, not Miss Price. Not consultant. She. Raymond said, yes. I walked to the upright by the service doors and set my tote beside it. Vivian's eyes followed the bag. What's in there? Music. Only approved selections, I hope. Some are older than your approval. Benton looked up. That landed. Vivian stepped closer. Marlene, I need tonight to run smoothly. I know. This gala saves a children's wing. I know that too. Then don't make it about yourself. There it was. The favorite accusation. A black woman names harm, and suddenly she is selfish. I looked past her to the stage. The song is not about me. No, Vivian said. It's about my family. I let the silence answer first. Then I said, that's what we're here to discuss. Charles put his phone down. Raymond opened his folder. Karen and Denise drifted closer, pulled by the sound of something not yet breaking. The ballroom doors were open behind them. Staff moved in and out. A florist paused with white roses in both hands. The stage manager stopped near a coil of cable. Good. Witnesses. Vivian said, fine, discuss. Raymond began. We need to verify the source of Lark House Nocturne before auction. Vivian laughed once. At 4:30 on Gala Day? Yes? Absurd. Charles said, Raymond, this is not the time. Raymond looked at him. It may be exactly the time. Vivian crossed her arms. The piece came from my grandmother's collection. I opened my tote, not the scorebook yet, the folder. I took out the Ashford Grand Program from 1978 and placed it on the upright piano. Your grandfather hired my father, I said. Vivian glanced down. So? I placed Arthur Lark's letter beside it. He acknowledged the composition was original. Charles moved before Vivian did, just a half step, a banker reaching for a number before it changed. May I see that? He asked. No. His face tightened. I looked at Vivian. Your grandfather promised my father $900. Vivian's cheeks colored. That has nothing to do with tonight. It has everything to do with tonight. Benton Vale stood from the grand. I arranged what I was given, he said. Moral verdict, careless, but newly afraid. I looked at him. Who removed the composer line? He swallowed. The copy had none. Who gave you the copy? Vivian. Vivian snapped, because it's a family piece. No, I said. My voice stayed low. A low voice makes people lean in. My father wrote it. Denise Avery whispered, oh my. Moral verdict, late but listening. Karen Holt stared at the letter. Moral verdict, understanding the price of silence. Charles said, this is a copyright dispute. It's not relevant to foundation proceeds. I turned to him. It is if the proceeds were in your loan pitch. His face changed. Not much. Enough. Vivian looked at him. Charles. Raymond opened the gray folder. Collateral narrative, he said. Anonymous principal donor match, vendor fees, first performance auction revenue. Vivian went still. For the first time since I had known her, she did not have a sentence ready. Charles reached for the folder. Raymond pulled it back. No. The florist with the roses took one step backward. The stage manager looked at the floor, but he did not leave. Evan stood near the bar with both hands clasped. The room had witnesses now. Not 400. Not yet. But enough for a lie to feel crowded. Vivian found her voice. That document is private. Raymond said, then it exists. She looked at Charles. He said nothing. That was an answer. I picked up the 2 badges and laid them on the upright. Principal matching donor, volunteer music support. The plastic clicked against the wood. Someone placed both in my packet, I said. One would put me at the center. One would put me by the kitchen. Vivian looked at them, then at me. I didn't assemble packets. No, you supervised guest experience. Karen's hand went to her mouth. Denise looked down. Charles said, this is inflammatory. It is organized, I said. That quieted him. Vivian leaned close enough that only the front cluster heard her clearly. You are making a scene over a song your father played for my family. There it was, the last little door. She knew enough to say played, not wrote, played. I picked up the Arthur Lark letter. He wrote it, I said. Your grandfather knew it. Vivian's eyes flicked to the page, a quick flick, too quick. Raymond saw it too. He said, Vivian, have you seen this letter before? No. Are you sure? Yes. Then why did you know it involved a performance for your family? Her mouth opened, closed. Charles stepped in. Enough. We have guests arriving in 90 minutes. Raymond turned to Karen and Denise. Executive decision. I recommend freezing the auction item. Vivian's head snapped toward him. You cannot do that. I can recommend it. You'll destroy the night. No, I said. The truth may inconvenience it. Vivian looked at me then, really looked. Deep brown skin, silver threaded braids, navy dress, no apron, no tray, no lowered eyes. She saw all of it and still chose wrong. "You people always want the room to stop," she said. The words hit the floor. No one moved. Even Charles looked at her. Not because he disagreed, because she had said the quiet part with staff present. I felt my father's scorebook against my leg through the tote. I did not rise. I placed the note. I said, "The room stopped before I got here." Raymond closed the gray folder. "The auction item is frozen pending review." Vivian laughed. It cracked. "You don't have board majority." Karen Holt lowered her hand. "I support freezing it." Denise Avery looked at Vivian, then at the badges. "So do I." Moral verdicts can change, not erase, change. Vivian stared at them like chairs had started speaking. Charles picked up his phone. "I'm calling counsel." Raymond said, "Do that." Then he looked at Vivian. "And Lark House's commission on that item is frozen too." There it was, $22,500. Stopped at the door. Vivian's face lost color. For one clean second, I saw the real fear behind the pearls. Not shame, arithmetic. Then the ballroom manager hurried in. "Mrs. Lark, guests are arriving early." Vivian turned toward the doors. Already, voices came from the lobby. Soft laughter, heels, men greeting men by last name. Ashford money entering its favorite room. Vivian looked at me, then at the upright. Her smile came back in pieces. "This discussion is not over," she said. "No," I said. "It isn't." She walked away to greet the first guests. Raymond stepped beside me. "Are you all right?" "Yes." That was a lot. It was only the first verse. He looked at the scorebook still hidden in my tote. "Keep that close." "I will." Then he lowered his voice. "Marlene, the full donor program goes on every table tonight." "Does it name me?" "Only as M.E. Price." "Leave it." He studied me. "You're sure?" "Yes." I picked up the volunteer badge. The cheap plastic caught the ballroom light. Tonight, Vivian can keep guessing which one she invited. I turned the volunteer badge over once in my palm. Volunteer music support. Support. That word had done a lot of unpaid labor in Ashford. I slipped the badge into my purse, face down. Then I took the principal donor badge and turned that one backward too. I clipped it low on my dress, near the seam where navy cloth met shadow. From the front, it looked like nothing but blank plastic. Raymond noticed. "You're wearing it backward," he said. "I know." "That may confuse check-in." "Good." He almost smiled. Then his face tightened again when Vivian laughed near the ballroom doors. Guests were coming in now, not all at once, in expensive little clusters. Men with folded pocket squares, women with hair set hard enough to survive weather, people from Sycamore Street who still talked about downtown Akron like it was another country. Mrs. Alcott from the hospital auxiliary saw me by the upright. "Marlene Price," she said. "Are you playing tonight?" "Some." "That's wonderful." Moral verdict, kind in public, careful in private. Her eyes touched the backward badge. She did not ask. Behind her, Judge Fenwick walked in with his wife. He looked toward the stage, then toward the service doors, then at me. He gave the small nod men give when they think politeness covers history. Moral verdict, trained in manners, not repair. Vivian crossed the room with 2 champagne flutes in her hand. She handed one to Mrs. Fenwick and touched her elbow. "Elaine, you're at table 3, she said, "best sightline." Then she turned to me. "Marlene, could you not stand there?" "Where should I stand?" "Near the upright. That's your station." Station. I looked at the little piano beside the service doors. Its walnut finish had scratches along the front panel. One caster leaned inward. Somebody had placed a black cloth over the bench as if shame could be draped. I need to tune it, I said. Vivian's eyes narrowed. Now? Unless you want it to embarrass you later. That did it. Embarrassment was a language she respected. Fine, she said, quickly. I sat down and lifted the fallboard. The keys were yellowed at the edges, not from age alone. Neglect has a smell. Dust, old polish, damp wool from nearby coats. I pressed middle C. It sagged. Then E, then G. The cord leaned sour. A server passed behind me carrying bread plates. He stopped for half a second. You hear that too? I asked him. He blinked. I just know it sounds sad. What's your name? Luis. Luis, that's the best description all day. He smiled and kept moving. Moral verdict. Working, watching, awake. I pulled the small tuning kit from my tote. My students always thought tuning was magic until I showed them it was patience and physics. I set the rubber wedge, found the pin, and eased it a breath at a time. Benton Vale came down from the stage. You tune? He asked. I listened. He stood beside the upright, arms folded. I was told that piano was decorative. Most neglect starts with that sentence. He lowered his voice. I didn't know. About the song? About any of it. You arranged a piece without a composer. I asked. Who answered? He looked toward Vivian. She said it was ancestral. I adjusted the A. Ancestral is not a name. He took that like a slap he had earned. I can withdraw my arrangement, he said. Not yet. Why not? Because I need it to remain wrong where people can see it. He looked at me then, not as staff, not as scenery. What do you want from me? Tell the truth when asked. That's all? That is usually the part people skip. He nodded once and went back to the stage. Raymond moved along the tables, checking the printed donor programs. I watched him lift one, open it, and stop. His thumb rested halfway down the page. He looked at me. I gave nothing away. The program did not say Marlene Price. Raymond had kept his word. It said M.E. Price, principal matching donor, $312,000. $312,000. My late husband's insurance money had not felt like money when the check came. It had felt like an ending with a routing number. I had put part of it away because grief should not make every decision at once. Then the hospital called about the children's wing. Then Raymond called about the match. Then I thought of every parent I had seen sleeping in a plastic chair beside a child's bed. So I signed M.E. Price, not anonymous out of shame. Anonymous because I had no appetite for applause. Vivian still did not know that. Charles did, or he was starting to. I saw him at table 4 with the program open in his hand. His smile faded by degrees. First the mouth, then the eyes, then the shoulders. He turned the page, then turned back. Vivian, he called softly. She ignored him while greeting the mayor. Vivian? She looked over, annoyed. He held up the program just enough. She crossed to him. I could not hear the first words. I could read faces. A lifetime in classrooms teaches you that. Charles tapped the donor line. Vivian shook her head. He tapped it again. She snatched the program from him and looked down. There it was, the quiet activation. Not a trumpet, not a speech, a printed line on cream paper at every table. M.E. Price. Money has a way of entering rooms ahead of its owner. Tonight, mine had taken a seat before Vivian knew where to place me. She looked up and scanned the ballroom. Her eyes found Raymond first, then Karen, then Denise, then me. I was seated at the upright with a tuning wrench in my hand. Her confusion pleased me more than it should have. I gave myself that small sin and kept working. Charles came toward Raymond with the program folded in half. We need to pull these, he said. Raymond did not move. No. There's a privacy issue. The donor approved initials. Initials can be identifying. To whom? Charles's jaw moved. Raymond said, Say it. Charles looked around. This is not the venue. Then stop making a venue of it. Vivian arrived beside him. Her smile was back, but it had seams. Raymond, we have a donor recognition concern. No, we don't. A guest may connect things. What things? She glanced at me. You know. I don't. Yes, he did. But Raymond Whitcomb had practiced law long enough to make a person walk to the edge of their own sentence. Vivian lowered her voice. If M.E. Price is in attendance, we should manage the reveal. There is no reveal scheduled. There may need to be. No. Charles leaned in. The lender materials cite the anonymous match. Raymond's face hardened. Careful. I am being careful. No, you're being audible. Karen Holt came up behind them. She had a program in her hand, too. Do we have a problem? She asked. Vivian turned too quickly. No. Charles said, possibly. Karen looked at Raymond. Is the matching gift secure? Yes, Raymond said. Is the donor withdrawing? No. Her shoulders lowered. Then what's the issue? Vivian smiled at Karen like she was smoothing frosting over a cracked cake. Recognition protocol, she said. Nothing more. Karen's eyes moved to me by the service doors, then to the backward badge on my dress. Moral verdict, finally doing math. Denise joined them with 2 table cards in one hand. I just had a guest ask who M.E. Price is, she said. Vivian's mouth tightened. Which guest? Mrs. Alcott. Of course she did. Raymond said, the answer is private. Denise nodded. That's what I told her. Moral verdict, small correction, late payment. Vivian looked at the programs again. All right, she said. Leave them. Charles turned to her. Vivian. Leave them, she repeated. Her voice was calm. Her fingers were crushing the program. Then she looked at me. Marlene, we're adjusting the music order. Are we? Yes. Benton will open with the Lark piece. Raymond said, no, he won't. Vivian did not turn. The auction item is frozen. The performance is not. That's not appropriate. It's heritage music, Raymond. You can't freeze history. History. That word likes rich mouths. I set the tuning wrench down. Who will introduce it? Vivian's eyes glittered. I will. Raymond stepped closer. Vivian. She lifted one hand. No auction, no appeal. Just a musical nod to family legacy. Charles said nothing. That told me he approved. Benton stood on the stage, hearing every word. I asked, and what do you want me to do? Vivian smiled wider. After Benton, you can play something familiar from the upright. A hymn, maybe. Something warm. Warm. At the kitchen piano, after the stolen song. In front of people reading my initials without knowing my face. A clean setup. Raymond looked at me. Marlene, you don't have to. I know. Vivian tilted her head. It's just background. Then nobody should mind. She studied me. Mind what? If I play what fits. Her smile thinned. As long as it's appropriate. Appropriate. That meant small, grateful, unthreatening, something that would sit down when told. I understand, I said. Outside, the lobby had filled. The ballroom manager opened both main doors. Sound rolled in, perfume, wool coats, laughter, forks being aligned, the old Ashford Grand doing what it had always done, taking people in and sorting them without saying the sorting out loud. I stood and tested the upright one more time. The cord held. Luis passed again, slower this time. You fixed it, he said. I improved it. That's church talk? That's teacher talk. He grinned. Mrs. Lark told us to keep this aisle clear. Then keep it clear. She also told us not to speak to guests unless spoken to. I looked at him. Did she say I was a guest? He hesitated. Not exactly. Thank you. He looked ashamed. I'm sorry. You didn't write the order. No, ma'am. But you can decide how much of it you become. He nodded, and that nod stayed with me. At 6:15, the first seating bell chimed. Not a real bell. A soft tone from the sound system. Ashford liked its commands elegant. People found tables, programs opened, whispers moved. I took my assigned place near the upright. Not at table 1, not table 2. No dinner chair with a printed card. Vivian had not assigned me a meal. That was another little message. Raymond noticed from across the room. He came over with his own place card in his hand. Where's your seat? I have a station. His face changed. I'll fix it. Not now. Marlene, let her leave it visible. He looked toward the tables. That's ugly. Yes. You should eat. I ate at home. That was not true. I had taken 3 bites of toast at 11 that morning, but hunger was not new. My mother used to say a woman can miss a meal and still keep her name. Raymond slipped his place card into his jacket. I'll stand too. No, chair the room. I can do both. Raymond. He stopped. Chair the room, I said again. He understood. A chair out of place can be dismissed as sentiment. A chair at the microphone can move minutes into record. He returned to the front table. Vivian saw that exchange. Her eyes dropped to my backward badge again. She wanted to ask. She could not ask without admitting there was something to know. That was the false bottom under the evening. She thought the secret was whether I would make trouble over the song. The deeper secret was that the gala she was using to save herself had already been saved by the woman she kept sending to the back. At 6:30, Vivian walked to the stage. The lights dimmed. 400 guests quieted with the soft rustle of money settling itself. Vivian stood at the lectern in winter white, pearls bright, voice smooth. Good evening, friends of Ashford Regional. Applause. I stood beside the upright with my hands folded. From there I could see table 1 and the side of the stage. I could also see the service corridor reflected in the brass plate by the door. A woman learns exits early. Vivian thanked the hospital president, the mayor, the auxiliary, the sponsors. Lark House events, of course. She said the lighting alone had been donated at a value of $50,000. She said it like rented light could bless a child. Then she lifted the program. And tonight, she said, we are honored by a generous anonymous matching commitment of $312,000. The room applauded harder. I looked down. My father's scorebook rested inside my tote against my ankle. Vivian continued. Some gifts come with names, some come with humility. That almost made me laugh. Humility, from her mouth, meant invisibility when useful and recognition when profitable. She looked toward the service doors. Every person in this room has a role tonight, she said. Some lead, some serve, some support from the edges. The edge, another word with clean gloves. Mrs. Alcott looked back at me. So did Karen. Denise stared at her lap. Judge Fenwick lifted his water glass. Moral verdicts, itemized and filed. Vivian turned toward Benton. To open our evening, my dear friend Benton Vale will perform a piece long treasured by my family. We know it as Lark House Nocturne. Raymond's hand tightened around his fork. Benton sat at the grand piano. For a second, I thought he might refuse. He did not. Moral verdict, fear wearing formal black. He began. The first notes rose clean and wrong. Clean because Benton was a professional. Wrong because the room was hearing my father through another family's name. I had heard that melody before I knew multiplication. My father played it on our church piano after evening service when my mother was folding bulletins. He called it the blue one when I was small because I did not know titles yet. The left hand walked like a man going home tired. The right hand answered with something close to hope, but not foolish enough to trust it. Benton had made it prettier. That was his mistake. Ellis Price had not written pretty. He wrote dignity with rent due. The room listened. Vivian stood near the lectern with her eyes half lowered, performing memory. Charles watched the donor tables, not the piano. Raymond watched me. I did not rise. I placed the note. When Benton finished, applause came full and warm. People stood at table 2, then table 5. Not a standing ovation, not yet. Just enough for Vivian to believe the theft still had legs. She returned to the microphone. "Beautiful," she said. "Just beautiful." Benton stood and bowed once. His eyes did not meet mine. Vivian lifted a hand toward me. "And now, from our service side upright, Miss Marlene Price will offer a brief selection as our first course is served." There it was, public, polished, small enough to pass as courtesy. The servants' piano, without saying servants. Several heads turned. Not all. Enough. I walked to the upright. The bench cloth slid when I touched it. I folded it once and set it on the floor. I did not need their cover. A waiter started through the aisle with soup bowls. Vivian flicked 2 fingers. He stopped. Good. Now the room could hear. I sat. The backward badge tapped lightly against the wood. From the stage, Vivian said, "Something familiar, Marlene." I looked at her. Then I looked at the keys. "Of course," I said. My voice carried less than hers. It carried enough. I played 4 bars of Blessed Assurance, soft, plain. My mother's church rose in my hands, Mount Zion on a Sunday morning, fans moving, Mrs. Bell humming before the choir found the pitch, children leaning against grandmothers who smelled like peppermints and hair oil. The guests relaxed. That was what Vivian wanted, familiarity as containment. Then I changed 1 note, just 1, a passing tone from my father's song. Raymond heard it, his head lifted. I played another hymn phrase and turned it again, not enough to accuse, enough to plant. The melody was inside the hymn now, sitting under it like the truth under manners. Mrs. Alcott leaned toward her husband. "What is that?" she whispered. I heard her because music had trained me to catch small things. I kept playing. Vivian's smile flickered. She knew the sound. She did not know why it had followed her across the room. Benton took 1 step down from the stage. Charles looked at Vivian. I ended on a clean chord. No flourish. The applause came softer than Benton's. That was fine. I had not played for their hands. I had put the first mark on the public wall. Vivian returned to the microphone too quickly. "Thank you, Marlene." "Thank you." Dismissal dressed as gratitude. The soup service resumed. I stood and reached for my tote. Vivian caught that. "Please stay nearby," she said. "We may need more background." "Background," I repeated. Her eyes sharpened. "Yes." I sat back down. For the next 20 minutes, plates moved and donors talked over parsley garnish. Raymond did not eat. Karen whispered to Denise. Charles left the ballroom once, then came back with his phone pressed flat against his palm. Vivian crossed to me during the salad course. She bent low beside the upright. Oh. Her perfume arrived before her words. "What did you play?" "A hymn." "No." "Yes." That middle phrase. My father liked passing tones. Her smile vanished. "Don't be clever." "I'm not. This is not your platform." "No, it's a hospital gala." "Then act like you know that." I looked at her white pearls, her controlled face, her fear tucked under powder. "I do." She glanced at my badge. "Why is that backward?" "So it won't distract." "Turn it around. You told me I was background." Her lips parted. I had not raised my voice. That made it worse for her. Charles appeared behind her. "Vivian," he said. She straightened. "What?" He looked at me, then back at her. Now. They moved toward the side corridor. I waited 3 breaths. Then I stood, picked up my tote, and walked to the corridor entrance as if I needed water. No one stopped a black woman near service doors when she moved with purpose. That was the old insult making itself useful for once. Their voices carried from beside the coat alcove. Charles said, "The lender is here." Vivian hissed, "Why?" "He wanted to see donor confidence. You said he wasn't attending. He changed his mind." "Charles, don't start with me. We need that bridge." "How much did you disclose?" "Enough." "How much?" "The match, the auction projection, the vendor commission." "You put commission in writing?" "It was a revenue line." Vivian cursed under her breath. A small, tidy word. Still ugly. Charles said, "If that woman is M.E. Price, we have a problem. That woman." I looked down at my deep brown hand on the tote strap and thought of my mother telling me never to let people make my name optional. Vivian said, "She's a school teacher." So? So where would she get $312,000? There it was. Not confusion. Impossibility. My black profession could serve children, play hymns, steady rooms, and translate insults into silence. It could not, in Vivian's mind, write the check that saved her evening. Charles said, "Widow benefits, family money, settlement. I don't know." "Don't be absurd. The badge is backward." "Lots of badges are backward." "No, Vivian. Hers matters." A third voice entered, male, older, dry. "Charles, your banker is waiting." I turned slightly. Raymond stood at the corridor mouth. Vivian's face stiffened when she saw him. Then it stiffened more when she saw me. "How long have you been standing there?" she asked. "Long enough," I said. Charles recovered first. "This is a private conversation." Raymond said, "In a hotel corridor during a foundation event?" The older man behind Charles stepped forward. I recognized him from an article Raymond had shown me. Paul Renner, private lender, gray hair, no wedding ring, smile like a closed drawer. Moral verdict, money without fingerprints. He looked at me with mild interest. "Are you at the foundation?" he asked. I said, "Tonight depends on how you define with." Raymond almost coughed. Not laughter, restraint. Vivian rushed in. Marlene is assisting with music. Paul Renner looked at my tote. Ah. One syllable can carry a whole gate. Raymond said, "Mr. Renner, any discussion involving foundation pledges needs to come through my office." Renner smiled. "Of course." Charles said, "We were speaking generally." "No," I said. "You were speaking about collateral." Renner's eyes moved back to me. Vivian said, "Marlene." I turned to her. "You keep saying my name like it's a broom you can lean on." Raymond looked at the floor. Charles flushed. Renner's smile deepened by 1 fraction. Vivian stepped close. "Return to the piano." There it was again. The command with company present. I looked past her into the ballroom. 400 guests eating salad. Programs open. My father's song still unnamed in their ears. My donor initials sitting quietly on every table. Not yet. The true public reckoning needed the right object on the right wood in the right light. So I gave her what she thought was obedience. "Yes," I said. I walked back to the upright. Behind me, Raymond said, "Mr. Renner, walk with me." Renner said, "Gladly." Charles said, "Raymond, there's no need. There is every need." I sat down again as the main course arrived. Chicken in a pale sauce, green beans tied with chives, rolls nobody would finish, $50,000 in lights, $75,000 in frozen song money, $22,500 in stopped commission, $186,000 in debt breathing under Vivian's pearls. A ledger can be a prayer if you tell it true. Vivian returned to the stage after the plates were served. "We'll continue with our giving moment shortly," she said. "But first, a little more music." Her eyes came to me. "Miss Price, perhaps something from the old neighborhood." The old neighborhood. Not Mount Zion, not Sycamore Street, not Ashford. The old neighborhood. A phrase for people who wanted the flavor of blackness without the people having keys. Several guests smiled without understanding what they had heard. I looked at Vivian. Then I placed my hands on the keys and played "Lift Every Voice" so softly the first line felt like a question. Forks paused. A few people recognized it. Mrs. Bell would have, from the first interval. She was not there, but I felt her anyway. Vivian's face changed. She had asked for Old Neighborhood. I gave her a hymn older than her seating chart and too dignified to scold. I did not sing. I did not need to. Raymond returned through the side door while I played. Paul Renner was with him. Renner's expression had lost its shine. Charles stood near the bar, pale. That meant Raymond had shown him something. Not the scorebook. Not yet. Maybe the donor file. Maybe enough of the pledge terms to make a lender understand the bridge had rotten boards. I ended before the room could decide what it owed me. Applause came scattered, then stronger. Not because they were brave, because the music had trapped them into decency for 12 seconds. Vivian did not thank me that time. She stepped to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "we'll proceed with our foundation appeal." Raymond moved toward the stage. Vivian saw him and spoke faster. "As you know, tonight supports the pediatric wing expansion, including family sleep rooms, infusion chairs, and the new therapy suite. Good causes can be used by bad hands. That is what makes the offense worse." She continued. "We are close to our goal, and with tonight's matching gift, every dollar matters." Raymond reached the stage steps. Vivian turned slightly away from him. "So I ask each table captain to prepare your pledge cards." Raymond climbed the first step. Charles moved too, but Karen Holt stood in his path. "Charles," she said, "sit down." He blinked. "Excuse me?" "Sit down. Moral verdict, late courage, finally standing." Denise rose beside Karen. "Now," Denise said. "Moral verdict, following courage but following it." Charles looked toward Renner. Renner did not help him. Vivian kept talking. "Tonight is about children," she said. "It is about service. It is about knowing your role in something larger." Raymond reached the lectern and placed one hand beside hers. "Vivian," he said. The microphone caught it. The room heard. She smiled without looking at him. "Raymond, I'm speaking. I need the microphone. This is my appeal." "No, it's the foundation's." A murmur moved through the ballroom. I sat at the upright. My tote was open now. My hand rested on the leather scorebook. Not out. Close. Vivian covered the microphone with her palm, but her voice still carried enough. "Don't do this." Raymond said, "Step aside." "For what?" "A correction." Her eyes went to me, then to my tote, then to the room. She made a choice, not the wise one, the Vivian one. She laughed into the microphone. "Of course," she said, "our chair has a correction." Light laughter from table 6, nervous, obedient. She stepped back half a pace, still close enough to reclaim the lectern. Raymond adjusted the microphone. "Friends," he said, "before pledge cards are collected, the foundation needs to clarify one matter." Vivian's smile froze. I kept my hand on the scorebook. Raymond said, "The auction item associated with Lark House Nocturne has been withdrawn pending provenance review." The room stirred. He held up one hand. "No pledge tonight will be counted toward that item." Vivian leaned toward him. "Raymond." He did not look at her. Further, no vendor commission tied to that item will be paid unless and until ownership is verified. Charles closed his eyes. Renner studied his cuff. The first rung had landed in public. Not the title page, not the air clause, not my full name. A partial reveal. Enough to bruise the lie, not enough to kill it. Mrs. Alcott raised her hand halfway, as if she were in a civic meeting. "Raymond," she called, "is there a concern about the music?" Vivian reached for the microphone. "No concern." Raymond held it. "Yes," he said. The room went still. Vivian turned on him. "That's reckless." He said, "It's accurate." Judge Fenwick stood. "Is the donor match affected?" There it was. Money had found its own pulse. Raymond said, "No." Vivian smiled quickly. "Absolutely not." Raymond added, "The matching donor's gift remains secure." His eyes met mine. "And independent." Paul Renner heard that word. Independent. So did Charles. So did Vivian. Independent meant her bridge loan story had lost its borrowed spine. I looked down at the keys. My father used to say, "If the bass line moves, everything above it has to answer." The bass line had moved. Vivian took the microphone at last. "Thank you, Raymond," she said. "That was very procedural." Procedural. She could make a house fire sound like a linen invoice. Then she looked toward me and smiled. "Miss Price, perhaps you'll help us return to the spirit of the evening." She wanted me back in the corner, back under sound, back under serving. I stood, scorebook still in the tote. "Gladly," I said. The room watched me cross to the upright again. This time, more eyes followed the badge turned backward on my dress. Vivian had not learned yet. A hidden name is still a name. And mine was sitting at every table, waiting for somebody with courage to turn the page. I sat because Vivian had ordered it, and that was the shape she needed the room to see. Compliance. That word has fed many a proud person. I placed my tote beside the bench, close enough for my knee to touch the leather. The upright gave a small wooden groan under my hands. It had been ignored too long. Instruments know when a room only keeps them for appearances. People do too. Vivian stood at the lectern with both hands resting on the sides. "Something light?" she said. The microphone carried her smile. I looked at her. "Light." "Yes," she said. "Dinner music." Dinner music. The kind nobody has to honor. The kind that fills silence but never claims it. I began with a waltz my father hated. He used to call it wallpaper with shoes. He played it once at the Ashford Grand in 1976, while a man in a navy blazer asked if he knew anything with less church in it. Daddy took the request, played the waltz straight for 8 bars, then tucked a blues walk into the left hand so gentle that only the drummer noticed. That was what I did now. 8 bars of smooth. Then the smallest turn. Benton heard it first. His head came up. He was back near the stage, pretending to review his folder. His fingers froze on the paper. I changed the left hand again. Not enough for the ballroom to know. Enough for Benton to know I was not guessing. Vivian's mouth tightened. She kept smiling because the room was watching her, and women like Vivian can carry alarm under lipstick for a long time. At table 3, Mrs. Alcott had opened her program. Her husband leaned close. Judge Fenwick stood behind them now, hand on the back of a chair, looking toward Raymond. Karen Holt did not sit. Denise was beside her, eyes fixed on me, like a student waiting for the teacher to show the answer without saying it. I moved from the waltz into the opening measure of my father's song. Not all of it, just the bones. The right hand held back, the left hand walked, tired, steady. Going home because home still needed groceries. Forks stopped again. Benton took one step toward me. Vivian said, "Marlene." I kept playing. She said it sharper. "Marlene." I looked up, but my hands did not stop. Yes? Not that one. The room heard enough. Mrs. Alcott turned around. Not which one? Vivian laughed once. Just a programming matter. Programming. Another clean glove. Raymond moved from the stage to the floor. He came down the center aisle slowly, not rushing because rushing gives panic a body. His face had gone lawyer still. Benton reached the upright. Miss Price, he said softly, may I see that? He meant the tote. No, I said. He swallowed. I only want to compare. Then compare with your memory. His eyes dropped. Vivian left the lectern. Benton returned to the stage. He did not move. That was new. Moral verdict, borrowed courage, but still useful. Benton looked at me. I didn't know. I kept my hands on the keys. You knew the title was wrong. His face colored. That's different, he said. No, I said. It costs different. A sound moved through the closest tables. Not applause, not outrage, attention. Vivian reached us. This is not a courtroom. Raymond stopped beside table 4. No, Vivian. She turned on him. Then stop treating it like one. I'm treating it like a charity. Paul Renner stood near the bar with his phone out. Charles was beside him now, whispering hard. Renner did not look pleased. A lender does not love uncertainty. It reduces a room to arithmetic. Vivian faced the guests again. Friends, she said, without the microphone now, please enjoy your dinner. No one did. Mrs. Alcott lifted her program. It says here the matching donor is anonymous. Raymond looked at me. I gave him nothing, Mrs. Alcott went on. But it lists initials. Vivian's eyes flashed. Margaret, she said, now isn't the time. Mrs. Alcott read anyway. M.E. Price. There it was, not the whole name, not the key turned in the lock, but enough for every person close by to start searching the room. M.E. Price. 3 letters can weigh more than a sermon. Vivian's face moved toward me, then away, then back. She saw my backward badge. She saw Raymond looking at me. She saw Benton standing near my bench like a man who had carried the wrong box into the wrong house. Charles stepped forward. That's a common name. Karen Holt laughed. It was not kind. It was overdue. In Ashford? She said. Common where? Charles pointed at the program. Initials prove nothing. No, Raymond said. They raise a question. Vivian said, Raymond. He looked at her. And questions are allowed. I ended the phrase on an unresolved chord. It hung there. Everybody wanted it to settle. I did not give them that kindness. The head waiter came near Vivian, holding a folded note. He was a thin man with tired eyes and a black vest too tight at the buttons. Mrs. Lark, he said. She took the note without looking at him. Not now. He stayed there. Vivian looked down at the paper. Her color changed. Charles saw it. What? She folded the note smaller. Nothing. Raymond held out his hand. Is that foundation business? No. The waiter said, it's from the hotel manager. Vivian's eyes cut toward him. Moral verdict. A working man telling the truth because nobody had taught him to fear these people enough. Raymond said, read it. Vivian smiled at the waiter. Thank you, Martin. Martin. So she did know names when invoices were attached. He did not leave. She unfolded the note again. It's about a vendor hold. Charles said, what vendor hold? Raymond stepped closer. Which vendor? Vivian's voice lowered. Mine. The word did not travel far, but table 3 heard it. Table 4 heard it. I heard it because I had been listening to small things all my life. Renner put his phone away. Charles said, why would there be a hold? Martin answered before Vivian could. The hotel requires settlement before midnight. Vivian turned on him. That is not your concern. He looked frightened then, but he kept standing. Mr. Davin asked me to deliver it. Then you delivered it. Raymond took one step toward the note. How much? Vivian said, Raymond, don't. Martin looked at Raymond. 42,600. A number can make rich people remember gravity. $42,600. For ballroom balance, service labor, linen overages, and kitchen charges her company had promised to cover until donor receipts came in. Add that to $186,000 in debt. Add $22,500 in commission she thought was coming. Add the private bridge that needed proof of confidence. Add my $312,000 match sitting under my initials where she could smell it but not touch it. A ledger can sing if the room gets quiet enough. Vivian's lips pressed together. That is between my company and the hotel, she said. Raymond said, not if the foundation's name secured it. It didn't. Paul Renner spoke from near the bar. That's not quite right. Charles turned. Paul. Renner lifted one hand. I won't be the fool in this room. Vivian stared at him. He continued. The bridge package included a projected Gala receivable. Raymond asked, against donor pledges? Renner said, against expected proceeds. That's not an answer. It's the answer I'm giving. Judge Fenwick came down the aisle. Moral verdict, late law, smelling paperwork. He did not look at me. He looked at Raymond. Do we need to pause the appeal? Vivian said, no. Raymond said, yes. They spoke together. The ballroom heard the split. Vivian turned back toward the stage, quick now. Friends, we're taking a short musical interlude. No, Raymond said. She kept walking. Miss Price, she called, play. There it was again. Play. As if my hands were a curtain she could pull. I looked at her back. Then I looked at the ballroom. 400 guests waited under rented lights, and some of them had started to understand that they had not been invited to a clean thing. I played one note. Middle C, plain. Alone. It stopped Vivian at the first stage step. I played it again. Then I said, Benton. My voice carried because the room had leaned into silence. He looked startled. Yes? Bring your folder. Vivian spun around. Absolutely not. Raymond said, bring it. Benton looked between them. Then he went to the piano bench on stage and picked up the cream folder. Vivian moved toward him, but Karen Holt stepped out again. Don't touch him, Karen said. Vivian smiled coldly. You're confused about your authority. Karen said, no, I found it. Denise took out her phone. I'm recording. Charles said, put that away. Denise looked at him. No. Moral verdict, a small spine can still hold a room upright. Benton brought the folder to the upright. His hands shook. I did not pity him yet. Open it, I said. He opened the folder on the top of the piano. The first page was printed clean, heavy stock, with the foundation seal and a title in black. Lark House Nocturne. Under it, traditional family manuscript, arranged by Benton Vale. I read it without touching it. Who gave you that title? Benton's mouth worked. Vivian. Who gave you the melody? He glanced at her. I waited. He said, a copyist file. From where? Lark Events office. Vivian said, enough. I turned a page. Is Ellis Price named anywhere? Benton closed his eyes. No. The room stirred again. Mrs. Alcott stood fully now. Who is Ellis Price? I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because Ashford had used my father for years and still needed his daughter to introduce him. My father, I said. Vivian said, this is sentimental nonsense. I looked at her. No, sentiment is free. Then I tapped the printed sheet. This was for sale. Raymond came to my side. Benton, did you arrange this for auction? Benton nodded once. For what fee? $5,000. Vivian said, paid privately. Raymond asked, by whom? Benton looked at her again. By Lark Events, he said. Another number stepped onto the floor. $5,000 to polish a stolen tune. $75,000 pledged against the shine. $22,500 planned commission. $42,600 due by midnight. $186,000 owed before the night began. My father had been promised $900 in 1978 and got nothing. Gone. I reached into my tote. Vivian saw my hand disappear and made a sound low in her throat. Don't, she said. I brought out the leather scorebook. Not the loose letter. Not yet. Just the book. Its corners were soft from my father's hands and mine. The spine had one crack near the middle. The first page was still torn out, leaving that pale, ragged strip by the binding. I set it on the upright where Benton's printed folder sat. The difference between them was almost rude. One was dressed for donors, one had worked. Raymond looked down at it, and I saw him notice the torn first page. May I? He asked. Not yet, I said. That surprised him. It surprised Vivian more. Because polite women who have been underestimated are supposed to hand over proof the minute a good man asks. I had spent 52 years learning the cost of that habit. Raymond nodded. All right. Vivian laughed again, but this one had a crack in it. She has a notebook, she said. That's all. I opened the scorebook to the middle, where Daddy had written the blue one in pencil before he gave it its proper title. His handwriting leaned right when he was tired. The base notes were dark because he pressed too hard. Above one phrase he had written, "Don't sweeten this." I turned the book so Benton could see. Play bar 9, I said. He stared. Play it, I said. He moved to the keyboard beside me. I slid a few inches over, but I did not stand. He played bar 9 from the printed folder. Pretty. Then I played bar 9 from Daddy's hand. The same bones. But the printed version had shaved off the ache. It had made the turn polite. My father's version held the grace note late, almost behind the beat. Anybody could miss it if they only wanted something suitable for a ballroom. Benton whispered, "That's the original." Vivian said, "You can't know that." He looked at her then, fully. "Yes," he said, "I can." Renner exhaled through his nose. Charles said, "This proves nothing legally." Raymond said, "Charles, stop talking." Charles looked ready to answer, but Judge Fenwick stepped near him. "That may be wise," the judge said. "Moral verdict, pride finally under advisement." Vivian took one more step toward me. "You came here to ruin me." I looked up at her. My deep brown hands rested on my father's open music. My badge still faced my dress. My silver-threaded braids were pinned low, the same as when I played for funerals, weddings, graduations, and children who needed one steady adult in a room. "No," I said. "I came to give." Her eyes shone with anger. "You came dressed like staff." There it was, open enough, polite enough for her friends to pretend they had misheard if they needed to. I heard it clean, dressed like staff. The old Ashford sentence. Not just the badge, not just the service door. My black skin, my simple dress, my quiet shoes, my mother's church manners, my tote instead of a clutch. She had sorted me before she had learned my name. A few guests looked down at their plates. That was a moral verdict, too. I closed the scorebook halfway. "Vivian," I said, "you told me where to sit before you asked who I was." She opened her mouth. I kept going. "You told me to entertain from the back." The room held still. "You called my father's work your family's piece." Her chin lifted. "My family preserved it." "No," I said. "Your family renamed it." Raymond's eyes moved to me. He had heard something in that. He said, "Marlene." I looked at him. "What was the original title?" I kept my hand on the scorebook. "That page is missing." Vivian seized it. "Convenient." I turned my face to her. "Yes." She blinked. It was convenient for somebody. The words landed harder than if I had shouted them. Raymond went very still. Then he looked toward the side hall, where his assistant had disappeared earlier with the donor files. "Denise," he said. Denise lowered her phone. "Yes?" "Find Judith at registration. Tell her I need the price donor packet and the provenance file. Now." Vivian said, "No." Raymond did not look at her. "Now, Denise." Denise moved. Charles tried to follow, but Karen stepped with him. "Sit," she said again. He looked at the people watching and stopped. Vivian's hand gripped the edge of a chair. "There is no provenance file." Raymond looked at her. "There is always a file. Not for family property." "Then we'll learn why the foundation has one." That was the next rung, not the scorebook, not the final clause. A file Vivian did not expect, a page I had not seen, a missing piece with my father's name possibly waiting under Raymond's lock. My breath stayed even, but my chest felt tight. You can prepare for insult. You can prepare for greed. It is harder to prepare for the dead speaking from a drawer. I played 2 quiet chords while we waited. Not a song, just enough sound to keep the room from breaking into 20 private lies. Vivian hated it. "Stop playing," she said. I stopped. The silence was worse for her. Martin returned with another hotel man, Mr. Davin, short and broad in a black suit. He had a folder under his arm and the careful face of somebody paid to keep wealthy people comfortable until money failed. "Mrs. Lark," he said, "not now." "I'm afraid it is now." Raymond turned. "Mr. Davin?" "Mr. Whitcomb." Vivian said, "This is not foundation business." Mr. Davin looked at Raymond. "The master contract lists the foundation as guarantor for tonight's service balance." Raymond's face tightened. "Who signed that?" Mr. Davin opened the folder. "Charles Lark." Charles said, "Standard event paperwork." Raymond said, "You had no authority." Charles's voice went thin. Vivian said the board approved it. Vivian did not look at him. There it was, in front of everybody. Husband and wife, each reaching for the other as a shield and finding only paper. Renner stepped away from the bar. "I'm withdrawing my review," he said. Vivian turned. "Paul, don't be dramatic." He gave her a small smile. "I'm being solvent." Charles moved toward him. "We can explain." "You already did." Renner looked at Raymond. "I expect your counsel will call." Raymond said, "They will." Vivian's face changed again at that word. Counsel. She could survive gossip. She could bend embarrassment. She could not charm a contract after 400 people had heard the hinge squeak. Denise came back through the side doors with a woman in a black dress and low heels. Judith from registration carried a sealed navy folder against her chest. Her face had the look of someone who had just understood why Raymond had checked the programs 3 times that morning. She handed the folder to him. "Donor packet," she said, "and the attachment." Raymond took it but did not open it. He looked at me. "Marlene," he said, "this is your donor file." The room stirred at your, Vivian whispered, "No." Not loud, not staged, just fear. Raymond held the folder out to me. "It's sealed," he said. "You decide." That was the first proper thing any person had done with my name that night. I stood from the bench. My knees did not shake. My hands did not shake. My father's scorebook stayed open on the piano, Benton's polished folder beside it. I took the navy folder. On the front was a white label, M.E. Price, not full, still hidden, still mine. I broke the seal with my thumb. Inside sat the printed donor agreement I had signed in Raymond's office 3 weeks earlier. Beneath it was a yellowed page in a plastic sleeve. My body knew it before my mind finished. The torn edge matched the strip in the scorebook. I did not touch it at first. Raymond saw my face. "Is that from the book?" I nodded once. Vivian said, "That's impossible." I looked at her. "Not for everybody." I lifted the plastic sleeve. The room seemed to draw closer, though nobody moved. Across the top, in my father's heavy hand, was the original title, Sycamore Mercy. Not Lark House anything. Under it, in smaller writing, were the words I had not seen since childhood. For Lena, when Ashford feels cold. Lena, my mother. Her name before the bills and pill bottles and work shifts made people call her Mrs. Price. I heard Mount Zion in that instant. The fans, the floorboards. My mother folding bulletins while my father played Tired Hope into an old piano. I did not cry. Tears would have made some people comfortable. They know what to do with a crying black woman. They do not know what to do with a calm one holding proof. I placed the title page on the upright. Not for Raymond yet. For me. Then I slid the scorebook beside it. The torn edges lined up. A soft sound came from Benton. "Oh, Lord," he said. Vivian said, "That doesn't establish ownership." Raymond's eyes had moved below the title. He had seen something else, not all of it. Enough. His voice was quiet. "Marlene." I covered the lower half of the page with my hand. "Not yet," I said. He understood. The detonation was sitting under my palm, and the room was not ready. More important, Vivian was still standing behind words like ownership and establishment, trying to make theft sound like weather. I turned to Mr. Davin. "Sir," I said, "does your contract require payment tonight?" He blinked at being addressed by me. "Yes, ma'am." "How much is due right now?" $42,600. "If it isn't paid?" "We suspend open bar and post-event service." Vivian snapped. "You will not." He looked pained. "We have staff to pay." Staff. The word came back clean. I looked at Vivian. "People like them serve from the back too?" Her face went still. Martin looked down at his shoes. I reached into the Navy donor folder and removed the cashier's check copy from my match file. I had brought my own records because my father taught me that paper remembers when people do not. Raymond saw it. "Marlene?" I handed the copy to him, not the page. "My gift was for the hospital," I said. "Not linen debt, not commission, not bridge loans." "That's clear," he said. "Say it louder." He turned to the room. "The M.E. Price matching gift cannot be pledged, borrowed against, assigned, advanced, commissioned, or used to satisfy vendor debt. It is restricted to the pediatric wing expansion." A murmur moved through all 400 guests. Vivian looked at me with plain hatred then, and it did not hurt as much as her earlier smile. At least hatred tells the truth. Mrs. Alcott sat down slowly. Judge Fenwick asked, "Then who pays the hotel?" Raymond looked at Charles. Charles looked at Vivian. Vivian looked at no one. Mr. Davin closed his folder halfway. "We need an answer." Renner said, "I believe Mrs. Lark has heard the question." The room waited. For the first time that night, Vivian had no servant to point toward, no music to cover her, no borrowed family name to stand under. Her mouth opened. No sound came. I sat back on the bench and rested both hands over the keys. Then I played the first full line of Sycamore Mercy from my father's book. Not hidden in a hymn. Not tucked inside a waltz. Not softened for donors. The song stood up in that ballroom with its own name waiting on the wood. Raymond turned toward me, pale now in the old promise of the title's payoff. Not from weakness, from recognition. He knew. He had seen the lower clause. He had seen my full legal name somewhere inside that folder, and he had seen my father's name on the page. Vivian had made me play the servant's piano to mock me. Now the servant's piano had the title page. The room had the donor initials. And under my left hand, bar by bar, my father was walking toward the microphone. I did not play it fast. Daddy never wrote that song to impress a room. He wrote it for a woman who had learned how to keep supper warm and pride warmer. The first line moved under my fingers. Vivian stood near the stage steps, stuck between stopping me and being seen stopping me. Raymond watched the page under my palm. Charles watched Mr. Davin's folder. Benton watched my hands like he was seeing his own mistake grow teeth. When I reached bar 9, I held that grace note late. Benton whispered, "That's it." I looked at him. "Say it so they hear you." His throat moved. "That's the original turn." Vivian snapped, "Benton!" He flinched, but he did not look away from the page. I changed it. The room made one sound, not loud, just enough to tell me 400 people had learned how much a small admission can weigh. Raymond stepped closer. "Changed it how?" Benton rubbed his thumb over the edge of the cream folder. "I cleaned the rhythm, made it easier for auction." "For auction," Raymond said. "Yes." "Who asked you to clean it?" Benton looked at Vivian. She said, "Don't you dare." He shut his eyes once. "Mrs. Lark did." Vivian laughed, but there was no music left in it. "I asked for an arrangement. That isn't theft." "No," I said. "That's tailoring. Theft came first." Charles pointed at me. "You need to be careful." I turned my head. "I have been careful all night." That stopped him for half a breath. A black woman saying she had been careful in a room like that carried more history than Charles wanted to stand near. Mrs. Alcott lifted a hand from table 12. "Mr. Whitcomb, if this concerns the foundation, we need the record." Judge Fenwick nodded. "In the room." Renner said, "Agreed." Vivian looked around then. She counted faces, not people. That was always her mistake. Faces can turn. People remember. Raymond held out his hand to me, palm open. "Marlene, may I read the lower clause?" I kept my hand on that yellowed page. My father's pencil sat under my palm. For Lena, when Ashford feels cold. Under that, the part Raymond had seen. The part Daddy had written before he trusted any white family with his music again. I heard my mother in the back of my mind. "Don't hand over your good linen just because someone compliments the wash." I lifted my hand. Raymond did not snatch the page. He bent near it, careful as a man at a bedside. His eyes moved across the lines. Then he looked at me, and the old attorney in him came awake. "May I use the microphone?" I nodded. Vivian moved fast then. "No." Karen Holt stepped between Vivian and the stage steps. "Stay there." Vivian's eyes flashed. "I am the host." Karen said, "Not for long, I think." Moral verdict. Karen had spent the night serving plates, then chose the moment she would not serve a lie. Raymond went to the stage. The microphone gave a low breath when he touched it. He looked smaller beneath those rented lights, but his voice did not. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "I am Raymond Whitcomb, chair of the Ashford Children's Foundation." Vivian called, "Raymond, stop." He looked at her. "No." One word, clean. It did more than most speeches. He held up the yellowed page in its plastic sleeve. This title page was sealed inside the M.E. Price donor file held by the foundation. It matches the torn binding of the leather scorebook now on the upright piano. Denise had her phone up again. Judith stood beside registration with both hands clasped. Martin stayed near the service door, still as a post. Raymond read, "Sycamore Mercy," composed by Ellis Price, for Lena, when Ashford feels cold. My chest tightened, but I kept my chin level. My mother's name deserved a room that did not get to watch me break. Raymond continued. The lower notation reads, all rights and copies remain with Ellis Price and pass to my daughter, Marlene Elaine Price, unless assigned in writing by her hand. There it was, my whole name, not M.E., not staff, not the woman by the service doors. Marlene Elaine Price, daughter of Ellis, heir to the song, donor to the hospital. Black woman in a plain navy dress with my father's book open under the sidelight. Vivian's face emptied. Raymond lowered the page and reached toward me from the stage. Marlene, your badge. For a second, I did not understand. Then I looked down. My donor badge still faced my dress, turned backward from when Vivian had dismissed it. I walked to the stage steps, not hurried, not slow. Every step sounded plain on the ballroom floor. Raymond came down one step to meet me. He did not touch my shoulder. He did not make a show of kindness. He took the badge clip between two fingers and turned it around. The white card swung once. Marlene Elaine Price. Under it, in smaller print, principal matching donor. Then Raymond read from the program in his other hand. The anonymous matching gift of $312,000 was pledged by M.E. Price. A woman near the front covered her mouth. Someone behind the dessert table whispered, "Oh my God." I looked at Vivian. "People like you entertain us from the back," I said. The room went still enough to hear the microphone cord tap the stage. I said, "Tonight, people like me paid for the wing." That was the title paying its bill. Not with shouting, not with a thrown glass, with my name facing forward and my father's page held in the light. Raymond turned back to the microphone. The foundation recognizes Marlene Elaine Price as the owner and heir of Sycamore Mercy. No auction will proceed on this piece. Benton stepped back from the upright as if the folder might burn him. "I'm sorry," he said. I looked at him. "For what?" He swallowed. "For taking the job." "No," I said. "That's not enough." His face reddened. I said, "Say what you did." He nodded barely. "I arranged a melody I didn't verify. I let Mrs. Lark call it her family's piece." "And?" His mouth tightened. "I removed Ellis Price's name. That was better, not whole, but better. A person can't repent while hiding the noun." Raymond looked toward Judith. "Record that." Judith nodded. "Recorded." Vivian found her voice again. "This is absurd. A handwritten page doesn't make her a donor, a composer, and a court." Judge Fenwick said no, but it makes tonight's auction reckless. Renner added, "and the bridge loan representation false." Charles turned on him. "Paul." Renner's face stayed calm. "Don't use my name like we're friends." Mr. Davin cleared his throat. He had been holding his hotel folder against his stomach like a shield. "Mrs. Lark, we still need payment direction." Vivian stared at him. "Bill my office." He opened the folder. "We did." "Then bill it again." His cheeks flushed. The card was declined at 6:48. That landed low and hard. The Ashford Grand had seen divorces, retirements, fundraisers, and women smiling through things they would discuss later in kitchens. But a declined card spoken into a charity ballroom is its own kind of bell. Charles said, "Don't say that here." "Mr." Davin looked miserable. "You asked me to continue service." Raymond stepped down fully from the stage. "Mr. Davin, the foundation will not cover any balance under an unauthorized guarantee." Mr. Davin looked at Charles. "Then the Lark account is responsible." Karen said, "And the staff?" That question cut through the room better than the contract. Mr. Davin answered, "They're paid by the hotel. Tips are separate." I looked at the side tables, at the servers who had watched Vivian use their door as my place, at Martin, who had carried my tote with more respect than half the donors had carried their wine glasses, at Karen, who had found her authority and used it. I reached for my purse. Raymond saw the motion. Marlene. I shook my head once. Not the hotel bill. I took out my checkbook. Yes, I still carried one. My students teased me about it, but there are moments when a pen has more dignity than a phone screen. Vivian watched with hungry hope for one foolish second. I said, "Mr. Davin, how many service staff tonight?" He looked at his sheet. 28. Kitchen included? 36 with kitchen. I wrote slowly. This is for staff gratuities only, not Lark events, not the bar, not the ballroom. Raymond said, "Make the restriction clear." I am. I wrote $8,000, not because Vivian deserved rescue, because working people should not pay for her performance. I tore the check and handed it to Karen, not Mr. Davin. Split it through payroll if you can. Names attached. Karen looked at the check, then at me. Yes, ma'am. Vivian whispered, "You're enjoying this." I looked at her. No, I'm correcting it. There is a difference. Some people never learn it. Charles leaned close to Vivian. Do something. She hissed back, I am doing something. No, you're standing there. Their marriage had become a whispered ledger in front of 400 guests. Raymond returned to the microphone. As of tonight, the foundation freezes all payments to Lark events pending board review. Vivian said, "You can't do that without a vote." Mrs. Alcott stood again. "I move emergency suspension." Judge Fenwick said, "Second." Raymond looked around the nearest tables. Board members present? Hands rose, Mrs. Alcott, Judge Fenwick, Renner. Two others I had seen at the donor reception, one by the columns and one near the front. Their faces had that tight look people get when saving themselves starts resembling morality. Raymond said, "All in favor?" 5 hands stayed up. Opposed? Vivian raised hers alone. Charles looked at her, then at his lap. Moral verdict. Charles had signed the paper, but he would not lift his hand with her once the cost had a witness. Raymond said, "Motion carries." Vivian turned to the room. "You're all cowards." Mrs. Alcott said, "No, Vivian, we're late." That one stung her. I saw it. Raymond continued, "The donor correction will be entered tonight. The bridge loan materials and event contracts will go to Foundation Council in the morning." Renner lifted a finger. "Tonight." Raymond paused. "Tonight." Denise said, "I can scan them now." Judith said, "Registration has the copier code." Mr. Davin said quietly, "The hotel office is available." There, a room that had leaned into silence now leaned into record-keeping. Not glamorous, necessary. Vivian's eyes came back to me. "You planned all of this." I almost laughed. "Vivian, you seated me by a kitchen door. You hid who you were." "No," I said. "You didn't look." She stepped closer. Karen shifted, but I raised my hand. Not to stop a fight. There would be no fight. Only the last thin cloth pulled from a table. Vivian spoke low, but the microphone still caught some of it. "You people always wait for a chance to embarrass us." The room took that in. There was the line, not a slur, not loud enough for her friends to pretend it was theater, but clear. You people. Us. The whole old Ashford map drawn in 4 words. I felt every eye turn toward me. Some with shame, some with curiosity, some waiting to see if I would do the labor of making Vivian's meaning easier for them to swallow. I did not. I said, "You did that yourself." My voice stayed even. My mother would have heard it and known I was angry. Not hot angry, finished angry. Raymond's face tightened. "Mrs. Lark, leave the floor." Vivian looked at him. "You don't dismiss me." I just did. Charles reached for her elbow. She pulled away. Don't touch me. Mr. Davin stepped back toward the side door. Security is in the lobby. No, Vivian said. No, I am not being escorted from my own gala. I looked around the ballroom. Whose gala is it? No one answered quickly. That was answer enough. Raymond said into the microphone, This is an Ashford Children's Foundation event. Mrs. Alcott added, for the hospital. Karen said, and the staff would like to clear plates. A few people laughed before they caught themselves, not kind laughter, nervous laughter. But it broke Vivian's last stage light. She looked at the guests, then at the folder on the upright, then at my badge. Her mouth trembled with rage. You're not better than me. I said, I didn't come here to be better. Then why? I looked at the scorebook. Because my father's name was missing. That is a simple thing until it happens to yours. Raymond came down from the stage and stood beside me at the upright. Marlene, what do you want done with Benton's arrangement? Benton looked sick. I closed Daddy's scorebook halfway. Not destroyed. Vivian's eyes narrowed, searching for advantage. I said, marked. Raymond nodded. How? Derivative arrangement, unauthorized, based on Sycamore Mercy by Ellis Price. Benton whispered, yes, and no fee paid from hospital funds. Raymond turned to Judith. Add that. Judith wrote it down. Benton said, I'll return the $5,000. Vivian snapped, You will not. He looked at her, and for the first time he sounded like a grown man. I will. Moral verdict, Benton arrived as a hired Polish. He left that moment as a witness, which was less comfortable and more useful. Charles stood abruptly. We need counsel before anyone says another word. Judge Fenwick said, You needed counsel before you signed as guarantor. Renner looked at Mr. Davin. Was the guarantee attached to the bridge packet? Mr. Davin hesitated. I don't have that packet. Raymond looked at Charles. I do. Charles went pale. You what? Raymond said, You sent it to my office for foundation confirmation. My assistant flagged it. Vivian turned on Charles. You sent it to Raymond? Charles's voice cracked. You told me to get the letter. I told you to get support. You told me the donor was some retired school teacher with no family office. The room shifted again. Retired school teacher, no family office. I was not retired. I was tired, which is different. And no, I did not have a family office. I had a kitchen table, a locked tin box, my late husband's life insurance, 2 certificates of deposit, and 31 years of salary I had not wasted trying to impress Ashford. Sacrifice has numbers. $48,000 from Leon's policy that I did not use to redo my bathroom. $71,000 from summer music camps I taught instead of resting. $36,000 from the Sycamore Street duplex sale after I kept the better tenants through winter. $157,000 from the account my mother told me never to touch unless a child needed it. $312,000 total, pledged to a hospital wing where no mother would have to drive to Akron at midnight if Ashford could help it. And Vivian had called that collateral. Gone. That was what she had intended for my gift if no one asked. I looked at Charles. You thought that made me easy. He opened his mouth, closed it. Raymond said, Answer her. Charles swallowed. I didn't know it was you. That wasn't the question. His eyes dropped. Vivian said, Don't answer. But he did, quietly. Yes. There it was again. Not apology, inventory. Raymond took off his glasses and cleaned them with a folded cloth. His hands shook once, then steadied. Mr. Davin, please suspend Lark Events access to Foundation billing. Mr. Davin nodded. Done. Judith, Pull every Lark invoice from the past year. Judith looked up. Tonight? Tonight. Vivian went rigid. That's harassment. Mrs. Alcott said. That's governance. Denise moved toward the registration table. I'll help. Raymond looked at me. Marlene, I need to ask one more thing in front of the room. I knew before he asked. Ask it. Do you want the matching gift withdrawn? That question made every donor sit straighter. Vivian's head lifted. For the first time since my badge turned around, hope entered her face. Not because she cared about children. Because if I withdrew, she could call me spiteful by breakfast. I looked at the hospital banner above the stage. Ashford Children's Wing Expansion. Blue letters, white cloth, nothing fancy. I thought about my students, their little brothers, the boys who came to choir with inhalers, the girls whose grandmothers kept appointment cards and Bible covers. Vivian did not get to make me small enough to punish them. No, I said. The room breathed. I said, the gift stays restricted. Raymond closed his eyes once. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. He opened them. I pointed to the program. Correct the donor name. Tonight. And the composer. Yes. And send my father's page back with me. Raymond nodded. Of course. Vivian said, that page belongs in the foundation record. I turned to her. It belongs to my family. She stared at me, and I saw the thing she could not bear. Not losing money, not even losing face, losing possession. She had built a life from rooms where other people's labor became her atmosphere. Food, flowers, music, cleaning, names left off the printed page. Now one piece would not stay taken. Raymond said, we can make a certified copy. Judge Fenwick added, with Ms. Price's permission. Ms. Price, it sounded good in that ballroom. I said, you may copy it here. I leave with the original. Raymond said, agreed. Martin came forward then. He had my tote in both hands. Ms. Price. His voice was soft. He held it like it mattered. Not like luggage, not like evidence, like a neighbor's Bible. Thank you, I said. Vivian looked at him. Martin, you work for me tonight. He did not raise his voice. No, ma'am, I work for the hotel. Moral verdict, Martin had opened the service door for me when Ashford pushed me toward it. Then he closed another door with one sentence. Mr. Davin checked his watch. Mrs. Lark, we need your decision on the open bar. Charles said, close it. Vivian spun. Charles, we can't pay it. The words came out plain, 4 syllables, and the whole false shine of the night dulled. Mr. Davin nodded to a captain by the bar. Close bar service, coffee and water remain. A small wave moved through the guests. People looked at glasses as if the glasses had betrayed them. That was Ashford, too. A stolen song made them murmur. A closed bar made them alert. Karen began directing servers. Clear from the back first. Leave dessert plates at tables still eating. She looked once toward me, not asking permission, just acknowledging the room had changed. Raymond gathered the plastic sleeve, the program, Benton's folder, and my donor packet onto the upright. We need a table. I said, use this piano. He paused. Then he understood. The servant's piano, Vivian had called it without using the full phrase after the first insult. The piano by the service doors. The one with the chipped leg and the tired keys. The one I had tuned by ear while she smiled. Raymond placed every document on top of it. The donor agreement, the corrected program, Benton's arrangement, Daddy's title page, the match copy showing $312,000, the hotel balance for $42,600, the $5,000 arrangement fee, the $75,000 pledge sheet, the bridge loan note with $186,000 in debt sitting under Vivian's name. A money ledger can preach if you line it up straight. Raymond said, Denise, photograph this order. Denise did. Flash, flash, flash. Vivian said, "This is obscene." I said, "No, it's organized." Judith arrived with a portable scanner from registration. "Mr. Whitcomb, outlet?" Martin pointed. "Behind the linen station." Charles muttered, "This is ridiculous." Renner said, "It's evidence preservation." Charles looked at him. "You sound pleased." Renner shook his head. "I sound awake." The scanner hummed on the service table. One page went through, then another. The noise was small, almost domestic, like an old printer in a church office before Sunday bulletins. That steadied me more than applause would have. Raymond handed me the program. "Marlene, approve this correction." He had written it on a blank pledge card because that was what he had. Sycamore Mercy by Ellis Price. Performed tonight by Marlene Elaine Price, heir and principal matching donor. I read every word. "Change performed," I said. "To what?" "Introduced." Raymond looked at me. "I didn't perform for them," I said. "I introduced my father properly. He changed it. Introduced tonight by Marlene Elaine Price." I nodded. "That's right." Vivian made a sound behind me. "Your father played lounges." I turned. Her face had gone sharp again. When money failed, she reached for class. When class failed, she reached for race. When race had shown itself too clearly, she reached for the old insult dressed as taste. "Yes," I said. "And churches, and weddings, and funerals, and back rooms where men like your father didn't write checks. My father preserved culture. Your father kept a page." Raymond looked down at the title sheet, and not the debt. That was when Mrs. Alcott stood and came closer. I had not trusted her. I still did not fully. A woman can be useful before she is righteous. She stopped a few feet from me. "Ms. Price, I served on the Archives Committee in 1996. Vivian said, "Eleanor." Mrs. Alcott did not look at her. There was a box from Lark House. The room leaned in again. I did not ask quickly. Asking quickly gives people power. Raymond said, "What box?" "Programs, old menus, band cards." Her mouth tightened. "A complaint letter." Vivian said, "Stop." Mrs. Alcott looked at me. "From a musician." My pulse moved once in my throat. Raymond asked, "Name?" "I don't remember." She looked ashamed, and maybe she should have. "I remember the amount. $900. Daddy's unpaid promise stood up again. I said, "Where is it?" Mrs. Alcott swallowed. "It was marked duplicate and sent back to the Lark family file." Vivian's face went white in a different way. Raymond turned to her. "Do you have it?" She said nothing. Charles did. "There are archive boxes in the carriage house." Vivian looked at him like she might erase him with her eyes. Judge Fenwick said, "Then they should be preserved." Renner took out his phone. "I'm calling counsel." Raymond nodded. "Tell them tonight includes archive materials." Vivian whispered, "You're all enjoying this." Mrs. Alcott said, "No, Vivian, we're recognizing it." That word mattered. Recognizing, not discovering, not inventing. Recognizing what had been there while Ashford looked away. I touched Daddy's scorebook. The leather was warm from the ballroom air and my hands. Raymond said, "Marlene, do you want to continue with the program?" I almost smiled. What program? He looked around. The auction table had gone quiet. The bar had closed. The host was cornered by her own paperwork. The pianist had confessed. The foundation chair was using a chipped upright as a legal table. Fair question. I said, "The hospital still needs its wing." Raymond nodded. "It does." "Then ask for clean pledges." He drew in a breath. "Now?" "Now." Vivian let out a bitter laugh. "After this?" I looked at the guests. especially after this. Raymond returned to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, the auction item is withdrawn. The matching gift remains. Any pledge made tonight must be direct to the Ashford Children's Foundation and restricted to the pediatric wing expansion. No vendor, host, officer, or private party may borrow against it or receive commission from it. He looked at me. Ms. Price has made that condition plain. A man from table 6 stood. My earlier 25,000 stays. His wife touched his sleeve. Make it 30. He nodded. 30. Judith wrote. Mrs. Alcott said, my table pledges 10,000. Renner said, my 75,000 pledge transfers from the song to the wing, restricted. Vivian's head snapped toward him. Paul. He did not turn. Restricted, he repeated. Judge Fenwick said, 5,000 from us. Denise said quietly, I can do 500. Raymond looked at her with more respect than he had shown half the room. Recorded. One by one, the pledges came back without Vivian's perfume on them. Not all. Some guests stayed seated, studying their napkins. Moral verdict. Silence can be expensive too. But enough stood. Enough wrote checks. Enough spoke numbers into a room that had finally learned to attach names to them. I sat at the upright again while Judith recorded pledges. My badge faced forward now. My father's scorebook lay open beside the restored title page. The keys under my fingers were still uneven. The same neglected piano, the same service door. The difference was not the instrument. The difference was that I had stopped letting my silence be furniture. Raymond came back to me after the last pledge in that round. His face looked older. We crossed the match. How much? He checked Judith's sheet. 326,500 pledged tonight, not counting your gift. I nodded. Good. He said, Marlene, I am sorry. There it was, the apology scene. One was enough if it carried weight. I looked at him. For what? He did not rush. For letting Vivian control the room, for not checking the music before tonight, for knowing Ashford could behave this way and still being surprised when it did. That was a better apology than most. It named the room, not just the moment. I said, and what about the ones who don't have a son who's the police chief? Raymond went still. The guests nearest us heard it. Karen heard it. Martin heard it. Denise lowered her pen. I said, what about the ones who don't bring a donor packet, or a scorebook, or a page with a dead man's handwriting? Raymond swallowed. You're right. I know. He nodded once. We'll review prior complaints. Not review, I said. Find. Mrs. Alcott spoke from behind him. I'll help. I looked at her. Start with the Lark boxes. She accepted that without flinching. Yes. Vivian had been quiet too long. That never meant peace. She stepped toward the upright, eyes fixed on the yellowed page. I want a copy. I closed the scorebook. No. Raymond said, you'll receive what counsel permits. Vivian ignored him. That song was in my house. I stood. So was my father. Her mouth opened. I said, that didn't make him yours. No one moved. The scanner clicked off. The last page slid into the tray. Denise gathered the copies. Judith placed each one in a foundation envelope and wrote across the front in block letters. Price donor file. Sycamore Mercy. Lark Review. Raymond handed me the plastic sleeve with Daddy's title page inside. Original. I took it with both hands. Then I opened the leather scorebook to the torn strip. The room watched me slide the page home against the ragged edge. It did not reattach. Life is not that neat. But it matched. Every fiber, every worn line, every old absence finally named. Benton, still near the bench, said, May I hear it once? Vivian made a sharp sound. Have you lost your mind? He looked at me. Not for them, for me. I studied him. He was young enough to still become better, and old enough to have known better already. That is a narrow bridge. No, I said. His face fell. Not tonight. He nodded. I understand. I sat again. Tonight, you listened to the part you changed. I played bar 9, just bar 9, the late grace note, the ache he had shaved off to make rich people comfortable. He closed his eyes. I said, that delay is the point. Benton whispered, yes, ma'am. Vivian turned away, but there was nowhere left to turn that did not have a witness. Mr. Davin approached with a printed slip. Mrs. Lark, final balance after bar closure is $38,900. Charles took it before she could. His hand shook. I'll handle it. Vivian laughed under her breath. With what? He looked at her, and something tired passed between them. With the truth, apparently. That was their private wreck, but it happened in public because they had built it with public money. Raymond signaled to Karen. Please resume dinner service where possible. Karen nodded. Coffee is ready. Coffee, water, documents, a corrected name. It was not the gala Vivian planned, but it was the first honest event that Ballroom had hosted all night. I gathered Daddy's scorebook, the restored title page, and my donor folder. Martin brought my tote without being asked. I placed the book inside last, flat and careful. Vivian watched me. You think this is over? I looked at her. No. Her eyes narrowed. I said, I think it finally started. Raymond stepped beside me. Foundation Council is on the way. Judge Fenwick said, I'll remain. Renner said, so will I. Mrs. Alcott looked toward the service hall. The carriage house boxes need securing. Charles rubbed both hands over his face. I'll get the keys. Vivian said, Charles. He stopped, but he did not turn around. No more. She stared at his back. That was the first bill she could not defer. Not the hotel balance, not the bridge note, the obedience bill. Raymond looked at me. Marlene, you don't have to stay. I glanced at the upright, its chipped leg, its yellowed keys, its new burden of being a table where Ashford had to tell the truth. I'll stay until my copies are made, I said. He nodded. Fair. I sat back down at the servants' piano. Around me, the ballroom moved in smaller, soberer motions. Servers poured coffee. Donors signed corrected pledge cards. Judith sealed envelopes. Denise scanned the last receipt. Charles walked toward the side hall for keys he should have used months earlier. Vivian stood under rented lights that no longer flattered her. I rested my fingers on middle C, plain, alone. Then I placed the note. The note did not fill the ballroom. It found the corners first. People kept moving, but softer. Forks touched plates. Coffee cups landed on saucers. The service door opened and closed behind me with that tired hotel swing, and every time it moved, I heard the hallway where Vivian had decided I belonged. Raymond stood at the end of the piano with a pen in his hand. He had stopped looking like a gala chairman. He looked like an old lawyer at a kitchen table, putting names where names should have been put the first time. Charles came back with a brass ring of keys. Vivian said, "Don't you dare!" He did not stop. He handed the ring to Raymond. Carriage house, east wall, 3 gray boxes and 1 cedar trunk. Raymond took the keys. Thank you. Vivian's laugh came out thin. Now you're noble? Charles looked at her. No, just cornered. That was the truest thing he said all night. Renner stepped close to Raymond. Council wants those boxes sealed in place. Who has access? Raymond asked. Charles answered, Vivian, me, the housekeeper. Vivian snapped, leave her out of this. Mrs. Alcott said, then stop putting people under things. That landed harder than a shout. I kept one hand on the keys. I did not play, I just held my place. My father had taught me that silence had rhythm too. Not the silence Vivian wanted from me. A held silence. A ready one. Martin came beside the upright. Ms. Price, your copies are almost done. Thank you. He looked toward the service hall. There's a back office with a lock. Raymond nodded. Use it. Mr. Davin said, hotel security can witness. Vivian's face changed when security was named. Not because she feared one guard in a black jacket, because a uniform made the room less social and more official. She had ruled social rooms. Official rooms had forms. Karen came from the kitchen with 2 servers behind her. She carried a tray of coffee, but her eyes went to me first. You need anything, Ms. Price? No, baby. I'm all right. She nodded like that mattered. Then she served the front tables first. Vivian saw it. Her mouth tightened. Servants. That word had sat under the whole night, even when she did not say it again. It had been in the piano, in the door, in the badge turned backward, in the second look at my deep brown face before anyone looked for my name. Now the people she placed at the back were carrying the cleanest part of the evening. Raymond said, Marlene, I need your signature on the corrected donor record. Judith brought the form. Her handwriting was neat from years of making messy people look orderly. I read it. Donor of record. Marlene Elaine Price. Matching pledge. $312,000. Restriction. Ashford Children's Wing expansion. No pledge funds assigned to private vendor obligation. I signed in blue ink. Vivian whispered, You enjoyed hiding. I looked up. I didn't hide. You used initials. I used a lawyer. A few people looked down fast. That almost made me smile. Raymond said, The foundation allowed anonymity. Then she should have stayed anonymous, Vivian said. No, I said. You needed me nameless. That's different. She took one step toward the piano. You came here to trap me. I closed the pen and laid it beside the form. I came here because sick children need rooms. You brought my father into it. Benton flinched. Good. Not because I wanted to bruise him, because he had to feel the weight of what he had copied. Talent without honesty is just decoration. Denise came back with a stack of warm pages. Copies for Ms. Price. Copies for counsel. Copies for the foundation file. Raymond checked the first page. Title page? Yes. Complaint letter if found? Renner said, I'm going to the carriage house. Mrs. Alcott lifted her purse strap. I'm going too. Vivian's eyes cut to her. Eleanor, think carefully. I have been, Mrs. Alcott said. That's the problem. Judge Fenwick stood. I'll remain with Ms. Price and the originals. He said it simply, no ceremony, no fuss, just a man placing his body near paper because paper had finally become protection. Charles looked at Vivian. Give them the trunk key. She folded her arms. I don't have it. He held out his hand. Vivian. Her chin rose. I said I don't. Charles put the keyring on the piano and separated a small iron key from the rest. You kept it on the same ring for 20 years. There it was, another little public death of a lie. He handed it to Renner. Vivian stared at him. You weak little man. Charles did not answer. That may have been his first strong moment. Renner, Mrs. Alcott, Martin, and hotel security went out through the side corridor. The door clicked behind them. The ballroom waited. Raymond spoke to Mr. Davin. No one leaves with foundation materials. Mr. Davin nodded. Understood. Vivian said, Am I a prisoner now? Judge Fenwick said, No, you're a board vendor under review. That did not sound dramatic. That was why it frightened her. Benton came closer again, holding his folded arrangement against his chest. Ms. Price. I looked at him. I'm withdrawing my fee. That's between you and the foundation. No, he said. It's between me and the work, too. I studied his face, then put it in writing. He nodded. I will. Tonight. Yes, ma'am. He moved to Judith's table and asked for paper. That was better than tears. Tears dry. Paper stays. Raymond turned back to me. Marlene, we should amend the minutes. Right now? Yes. Then say it plain. He gave me a tired look. You don't make it easy. No. He went to the microphone again. His hand did not shake this time. Ladies and gentlemen, the Foundation minutes will reflect that tonight's program misidentified the composition presented for auction. The correct title is Sycamore Mercy. The composer is Ellis Price. The heir of record is Marlene Elaine Price. The room stayed still. Raymond continued. The Foundation also records that Ms. Price is the principal matching donor behind the $312,000 restricted gift announced tonight. Any use of her gift or name in private loan materials was unauthorized by the Foundation. Vivian's hand went to the back of a chair. Raymond looked at her. Lark Events vendor access is suspended pending review. All invoices, loan references, and archive materials related to tonight's program will be delivered to council. He stepped away from the microphone. No applause came. I was grateful for that. Applause would have turned it into entertainment again. A woman near table 9 lifted her paddle halfway. Then she put it down and walked to Judith. I pledged through Lark's table, she said. Move mine direct. Judith asked, Amount? 2,000. A man behind her said, Same for mine, 1,500. Mr. Davin brought a hotel folder to Charles. Mr. Lark, we need a payment method before breakdown. Vivian spoke fast. The Foundation will cover it. Raymond said, It will not. They booked this room for a charity event. Not your unpaid bar, not your extras, not your private staging. Charles opened his wallet, looked inside, and closed it. Mr. Davin waited. That was the cruelty of a bill. It does not care about your family name. Charles said, I'll arrange a wire by morning. Mr. Davin's voice stayed polite. We require a signed personal guarantee tonight. Vivian looked around as if someone might rescue her from arithmetic. Nobody moved. The back corridor opened again. Renner came in first. He carried a gray archive box against his chest. Mrs. Alcott followed with a flat cedar lid in both hands. Martin carried the trunk. Hotel security walked behind them with a clipboard. Renner set the box on a banquet table near the piano. Vivian said, Those are family items. Mrs. Alcott said, Then your family saved everything but shame. Raymond cut the tape with a dinner knife. He did not dig. He lifted the first folder and read the label. Lark House Music, 1977 to 1982. My breath went shallow, but my hands stayed steady. He opened it. Programs, band cards, a receipt book with red edges, yellowed envelopes. Raymond lifted one envelope. Ellis Price. The ballroom seemed to lean again. He looked at me. May I? Yes. He unfolded the paper carefully. His eyes moved across the page. His jaw set. What is it? I asked. Raymond read, Mrs. Lark, I am writing again regarding the $900 promised for 12 performances and one original composition delivered for your winter benefit. Vivian said, That proves nothing. Raymond kept reading. The song is titled Sycamore Mercy. I did not consent to its sale or transfer. I ask that my name remain attached to it in any program. I put my palm flat on the piano. Daddy's handwriting had crossed that room before me. Raymond lowered the page. It's signed Ellis Price, February 2nd, 1979. Benton turned away and covered his mouth. Vivian said, Old musicians always complained. That was the line, not loud, Not clever, just bare. The room heard it without perfume. I stood. My father asked for $900 and his name. Your family kept both. Vivian's eyes burned. He played in our back room. I stepped away from the bench. People like you entertain us from the back, I said. Her own words returned to her without heat. Then I pointed to the upright. Tonight, the back kept the record. No one clapped, no one laughed. 400 guests had learned exactly who I was, and none of them could pretend the lesson was a parlor trick. Raymond placed Daddy's complaint letter beside the title page. He took a photograph, then another. Judith marked a new envelope in block letters. Ellis Price complaint. Original found in Lark Archive. Mrs. Alcott signed the witness sheet. Renner signed under her name. Martin signed after them. His hand moved slowly, careful with each letter. Vivian looked at him. You have no right. Martin capped the pen. I saw where it came from. Karen came to the table and set down a fresh cup of coffee near me. No saucer rattle, no spill. Cream? She asked. No, thank you. She stood beside me for 1 second longer than service required. That was her verdict. Raymond turned to the room again. The foundation will accept any remaining direct pledges at registration. Those who wish to leave may do so after checking out with Judith. People began to move, not the restless movement from before. This was quieter. Coats lifted from chairbacks, napkins folded. Men who had spoken over servers now waited while servers passed. Judge Fenwick leaned toward me. Do you want the complaint original too? I looked at the paper. No, I said. That one stays in the file. Raymond's brow moved. I said, but not hidden. He nodded. Not hidden. I took my father's title page, the copies, the donor correction, and the scorebook. The complaint letter stayed on top of the foundation envelope, visible under clear plastic. Vivian sat down at last, not gracefully, not as a lady receiving guests. She sat because standing had stopped working. Charles signed the hotel guarantee. His name looked small on the slip. Mr. Davin took it. Thank you. Vivian did not look at him. She looked at the piano. The servant's piano had become the only table in the room that mattered. Raymond came to me with the final folder. Marlene, counsel will call you tomorrow. Give them my school number. Not your private number? I'll be teaching. He almost smiled. Of course. Benton returned with a handwritten statement. I withdrew the $5,000 fee. I also stated I arranged from a misattributed source. I read it. Add that you received the source from Vivian. He went pale. Add it, I said. He did. Vivian said, You coward. Benton kept writing. That was another bill she could not push off. When he gave the paper to Judith, he did not look proud. Good. Pride would have been early. The ballroom thinned. Some guests left through the front doors. Some stayed at registration. A few came near me and stopped themselves because they could not find a sentence clean enough. Denise did come. She held her notebook against her waist. Ms. Price, I'm sorry I didn't turn the badge around sooner. That apology was small and specific. I could receive that. You saw it eventually. I should have seen it first. Yes, she nodded. No defense, no tears pressed into my hands. Just the truth and a pen mark on her own conscience. Raymond said, Denise, starting tomorrow, every name badge prints with donor status on the front. Staff, vendor, guest, board, donor, no blank backs. Denise wrote it down. Karen said from behind her, and service musicians get the full program page. Raymond looked at her. She held his eyes. With composer credit. He took a breath. Yes, add that. Denise wrote again. There was the widening, not in a speech, but in ink. A badge changed. A program changed. The next person at the back would have paper facing forward before anyone touched a piano bench. I packed my tote slowly. Daddy's scorebook went in flat. The restored title page stayed inside the front cover now. The copies went into the folder. The blue donor packet, finally opened, went on top. Raymond walked me toward the side of the stage. "May I ask one more thing?" he said. "You may ask. Would you consider serving on the records committee?" I stopped. "Ask me after you find every complaint." "That's fair." "No," I said. "That's the floor." He accepted that. At the door, Martin held my coat. Not like I was staff. Not like I was fragile. Like I was leaving a room that had taken enough. "Thank you, Martin." "Yes, ma'am." Vivian's voice came from behind me. "Marlene." I turned. She stood near the empty host table. Her flowers were still perfect. Everything else had come apart. "What do you want from me?" she asked. I looked at her a long moment. "Nothing." That confused her more than anger would have. I said, "That's your sentence for tonight. Nothing from me." Then I walked out through the front doors of the Ashford Grand. Sycamore Street was wet from a light rain I had not heard inside. The hotel lamps shone on the sidewalk, and my reflection moved beside me in the dark glass. Deep brown skin, silver-threaded braids pinned low, black coat buttoned to the throat. My tote pressed against my hip with my father's music inside. My car was 3 blocks down because I had parked where visitors park when they do not expect valet men to know their names. I walked past the old bank, past the bakery window, past the church bulletin board outside Mercy Chapel. My phone buzzed once. A text from my son. "You good?" I stopped under the awning and typed with cold fingers. "I'm bringing your grandfather home." The reply came fast. "I'm awake." Of course he was. Chief of police or not, he was still my child when his mother walked into Ashford dressed for a gala and came out carrying history. By the time I reached my kitchen, it was after 11. I did not turn on the big light. I used the lamp by the stove. My late husband had fixed that cord twice and told me to replace it both times. I never did. I set the tote on the counter. I took out the scorebook. I opened to the front. The torn page sat there now, not healed, but present. Ellis Price, Sycamore Mercy, for my daughter Marlene, who hears the rests. I touched the line once. My son knocked before he used his key. He came in wearing jeans and a sweatshirt, not a uniform. That was kind of him. He looked at my face. "You all right?" "I'm hungry." He blinked. Then he opened my refrigerator like he still lived there. Eggs and toast. He cooked while I sat at the kitchen table with the scorebook between my hands. We did not make the night smaller by talking too much. He put the plate in front of me, and I ate like a woman who had carried more than a purse. After a while, he said, "Do I need to do anything?" "No." "You sure?" "Be ready if counsel calls." He nodded. "Always." I looked at him over the rim of my coffee. "And don't arrest anybody just because you're mad." He almost smiled. "I know my job." "So do I." He sat across from me. The old house settled around us. Outside, a car passed on Sycamore and kept going. On Sunday morning, I carried the scorebook into Mercy Chapel before choir call. The sanctuary smelled of floor polish and old hymnals. Sun came through the small side windows and laid pale squares across the pews my mother had wiped down for 40 years. Pastor Green was checking the microphone. "Sister Marlene," he said, "you need the choir room?" "In a minute." He saw the book in my hands and lowered his voice. "That the one?" "Yes." He stepped back from the piano. I laid the leather scorebook on the church upright. Not the Ashford Grand's chipped piano. Ours. The one with pencil marks inside the hymnal rack and a middle C that always needed kindness. My choir students came in by twos and threes, whispering until they saw my face. Denise had brought her niece. Karen came in still wearing her work shoes. Martin stood at the back with his hands folded. Raymond entered last, holding a folder and not looking for a front pew. I opened the book to the restored title page. No one reached over me. No one renamed it. I placed my fingers on the keys and played the first chord.